Hey, it's Conrad Thompson, and you're listening to 83 Weeks with Eric Bischoff. Eric, what's going on, man? How are you?
I'm good, big man. I know we tried this morning and technical difficulties, all that aside, but there's even still things going on today that I'm glad we're going to be able to cover this evening so that we can drop this show ASAP and light up the world with a double dose of entertainment and enlightenment.
Come on now. It's 83 weeks. We should address right at the top of the show. We got a lot of feedback from last week's show. What was the feedback you saw about our Vince episode last week here on 83 Weeks, Eric?
I would say it was 98.5% supportive and very positive. There was a couple people that took some shots, and I don't know. I wouldn't even say they took shots as much as the line was along the lines of, hey, what happened to innocent till proven guilty? And I actually, reading a couple of those, I was a little disappointed in myself that I didn't start out my portion of our podcast by saying, if all of what we've read is true, then continue with the rest of the podcast. I don't know, I felt really good about it, but I think it is fair to acknowledge that we're hearing one side of the coin. Read a lot of things that none of us really wanted to read, but part of it all. But that's one side of the coin. So we'll see. But my reaction to it, if any of those things are true, or even half of them are true, still applies, man. Disappointing and all of that. We don't need to repeat. Other than that, I would say the majority of the positive feedback that I got, at least, was along the lines of, thank you for treating this situation with respect. And
yes,
not making fun of it or, worse. So, and that made me feel good. I mean, like we did something that was valuable to our audience.
Totally agree, man. One thing we did not do last week was read Vince McMahon's response. He issued a statement. I guess we should share that now. He put out a statement that said, "This lawsuit is replete with lies, obscene, made up instances that never occurred, and a vindictive distortion of the truth. He will vigorously defend himself." And, yeah, so we know that Vince is, obviously going to be battling here, and we understand that, but, it's been a lot to process, to say the least, and you can get down the rabbit hole and certainly try to see both sides. I saw lots of tweets like that, but I think we can all agree it's just, it's a black mark on WWE and Vince McMahon and his legacy, and it's been difficult for a lot of fans, myself included, to sort of reconcile their fandom. But the story just continues to evolve. The other person who was named in a pretty prominent way, and we know he was shown the door back in the summer of 2022, is John Laurinaitis. And since we've recorded, he has had a statement issued to Vice. And the headline was, "Co-defendant in Vince McMahon sex trafficking lawsuit says he was a victim too. The truth will come out," John Laurinaitis' attorney told Vice News. Mr. Laurinaitis denies the allegations of the misguided complaint and will be vigorously defending these charges in court, not the media. Attorney is an attorney named Mr. Brennan, Mr. Edward Brennan. And he would say, like the plaintiff, Mr. Laurinaitis is a victim in this case, not a predator. The truth will come out. If you continue to read the statement, it reads, "Read the allegations, read the federal statute, power, control, employment, supervisory capacity, dictatorial sexual demands with repercussions if not met. Count how many times in the complaint Vince exerts control over both of them." So, wow, a new wrinkle in all of this. I know there's a lot of people who have not been fond of Mr. Laurinaitis. And we've seen guys like Teddy Long come out on YouTube and say that he knows a whole lot of other stories. And there's certainly been whispers about Mr. Laurinaitis for a long, long time. But perhaps this gives a new shade to it. I mean, how do you respond or how did you receive that statement that Johnny Ace, as we like to call him, was a victim too?
I was not surprised, because what else is Johnny Laurinaitis going to do? but
Right.
try as best he can to salvage what's left of his reputation. And I think beyond even the reputational aspect of this, to protect himself financially, because he's at risk here. He's named in that lawsuit. Um, so it didn't surprise me. I think my first reaction though, because you and I think had a conversation the morning that this announcement came out. And because I've been thinking the night before about just how things tend to work, especially when the feds are involved, which they clearly are. When I say the feds, the SEC, Securities and Exchange Commission, and I've also read, and I don't know if it's true, the FBI is involved. But in a case like this, particularly if we're talking about potential crimes, and trafficking has been part of this, and you think about the interstate commerce, if there was any, and I would assume there probably was in some respects or some cases, it changes the stakes dramatically. And the thing that I kind of thought about that evening when I went to bed before I called you the next morning was, I wonder if Johnny Laurinaitis and Vince McMahon have the same attorney. Are they
Mm,
represented by the same firm? Because that would suggest to me that, okay, they're going to be on the same page. They're coordinating their defense. Um, that makes sense in many respects, but they're not. Johnny has clearly found an attorney outside of WWE's attorneys and outside of Vince McMahon's attorneys. He's got his own attorney, which opens up the door potentially for the feds to make a deal with Johnny to provide evidence. That complicates things dramatically, changes the dynamic. Very important. So then you and I had a conversation, and okay, well, we'll see where this falls. And then I got home that evening when I was done whatever I was doing that day. I went, I'm just going to look Johnny's attorney up to see what I can learn about the attorney in the firm that's representing Johnny.
wow. Okay.
See what kind of cases they had been involved. See what their reputation was. And lo and behold, now again, disclaimer here, folks, because I could be wrong about this. There may be other Edward Brennans that are attorneys in Tampa, but the one that I found is a family law attorney. He's a divorce attorney. And this is not anything remotely close to what family law attorney or a divorce attorney would have any experience dealing with. It's like going to, a chiropractor for heart surgery. It's just, wow. That shocked me, to be honest. That was shocking.
I didn't even think to do that, but a quick Google search and I found some reviews for Mr. Edward Michael Brennan. This is over on avvo.com. He's got a 2.6 score, and it looks like 3 of the reviews that gave him 1 star. The headlines of those reviews are over the top, expensive and incompetent, frustrated, and worse lawyer. So we've got, yeah, and they even describe him on avvo.com as an alimony attorney. He may actually need an alimony attorney when this is over with, but I don't think for a matter like this, maybe I didn't even think to do that, Eric. So kudos to you. I guess the big news, we should just jump right into it, is the idea that the Wall Street Journal has said that the federal investigation with Vince McMahon that started last year is still ongoing. And it's also been reported by the Wall Street Journal. There are 4 more women who've spoken to the FBI. Beyond that, we also saw that the victim's attorney last week came forward and said that since her client came forward, her office has been overwhelmed with others who have information or want to share their story. This feels like we're just sort of scratching the surface. I mean, first of all, as you said, until we talked on the phone, you and I had not considered that Vince might not have the same attorney as Johnny Ace, and this may become Vince versus John Laurinaitis now. That's not good. But in addition to that, we also see that I guess a lot of other folks, victims or people who have stories, are reaching out to the attorney who filed this original lawsuit that's gotten so much attention. But the big question you and I had last week was, man, are the feds involved? Because we had heard, and TKO actually acknowledged on their own website that the feds had quote unquote raided, if you will, Mr. McMahon's home. And at the time, I think there were a few questions about that. Was this about the class action lawsuit from shareholders? Was this about the MLW antitrust lawsuit? Or are they investigating these original sexual abuse claims, or whatever you want to call them, that originated in 2022? I think now we know the answer, since the Wall Street Journal says that's ongoing, and the FBI has been speaking to 4 other women. This is bad for WWE. It's bad for wrestling. Maybe it's the right thing to happen, but boy, it sure does feel like this is going to get worse before it gets better. What are your thoughts on all these new wrinkles that have come to light this week?
And I really, in a childlike way, I wish this would just be over with, and whatever the ramifications are, those who are involved and end up on the bad side of that equation just get what they deserve, get it over with, and move on. I would just wish it would go away, but it's not. It's not going to go away. And I'm not suggesting that I wish it would go away so people that were involved are able to get away from their responsibilities. That's not what I'm saying. What I am saying, though, is this, because it is such a dark cloud.
Yes.
And it is going to affect the business of the wrestling business. I talk often about my disappointment in certain situations. TNA, for example, not that they're remotely connected to this. And I'm talking about the former TNA, not the current TNA, right? Management. But, I get very frustrated and animated sometimes talking about missed opportunities and things that happen. I've been very critical, for example, with regard to AEW, about the pizza cutter and the blood and the excessive violence and blood and reliance upon that, because in my opinion, that has a negative impact on the business of the wrestling business, because it turns advertisers and sponsors, against the category, or validates their pre-existing bias against the property,
right?
The genre. This is the same thing, man. This has the ability, and maybe even more so than in other examples that I gave you, because WWE is the 800-pound gorilla. It is the wrestling industry as far as the vast majority of country believes. You've got a small percentage of the audience that are AEW fans and they follow TNA and they follow NWA. But if you pulled 100 people out of a Walmart or out of a Macy's or Nordstrom's, take your pick, and ask them, do you know anything about wrestling? And who's the owner of the wrestling company you're familiar with? And it's going to be Vince McMahon and WWE.
Right.
That just is what it is. It's not a criticism or a knock. It's just reality. And because of their success, because of their high profile, because of the $5 billion deal that Netflix just did, because this company was acquired by Endeavor for $9 billion, they are not the 800, they're the only gorilla as far as the average wrestling fan or people on the business to business side of things recognize. And because of their success, they cast a much greater, darker, in this case, shadow. And that concerns me, because I want the business to be healthy. I want Wayjay, my grandson Waylon, to watch wrestling in its current form in 15 years, and maybe have a DVD or something that says, oh yeah, my grandpa used to do that too. I want, not for an ego thing, but I just want the business to grow. And this is a complicated matter that could have a really negative impact on the business. I hope that's not the case. Truly.
It's also a situation where you wonder, these stories that are coming forward that they're learning about, are they all about Vince? Are there other people who are going to be named and involved? I think a lot of people have been asking questions about Vince McMahon's inner circle and lots of whispers that have happened over the years, and the way certain people have recently retired or stepped away or moved on. And I mean, I don't know where this ends because it does feel like, we've seen a pattern like this before with high profile individuals and powerful men like Harvey Weinstein and Bill Cosby. But those felt like those were more on the individual. So
Right.
far, we know for sure that Brock Lesnar has not been named, but pretty much outed. And now John Laurinaitis and Vince McMahon, it starts to feel like it's more of a culture thing. And specifically with the Brock Lesnar stuff, I mean, we've learned that almost all of his merch has been removed from the website. And as I understand it, there's been changes made to some of the digital games, like anything where they can remove his likeness or diminish it. Even on the Rumble, I missed it watching live. I wasn't paying attention, but there was no mention of Brock Lesnar and his history with the match. You just wonder, like, as they continue to peel the layers of this onion, how much shrapnel is everyone going to keep? And by the way, I'm not suggesting that those stories shouldn't come to light. I think everything that happens, in the darkness eventually does come to light and people will be, vindicated. And I hope everybody gets the justice they're looking for. But I'm with you. It is a dark cloud over all of WWE right now. And because it's over WWE, it trickles down everywhere else because they're the
Right.
brand. So do you suspect that? Because I'll be honest, I thought the blueprint of this whole thing was going to be just like what we saw in November when P. Diddy was sued by the former singer Cassie. She just spilled all the tea, gave all the details in that lawsuit, and it was settled almost immediately. I mean, like within 48 hours, it was settled and that's over with now. That's not been the case here, which makes me wonder either Vince doesn't want to play ball or they're not interested in just a payout. They're trying to bring about change. What do you think about that?
Well, that's what they say. But they, meaning Clayton's attorneys, and I'm like, I need attorneys. You need attorneys. We all need attorneys. If you're in business, you need attorneys, and there's a lot of great attorneys out there. I don't want to cast this wide net and disparage the profession. However, when it comes to this kind of thing, everybody's motivated by money, man. Nobody's doing this stuff for free. And this is a serious pot of money that's at stake here. And I'm not, again, not suggesting that the complainant has any ulterior motives or motives beyond just justice in her mind, whatever that means, her. But when you get attorneys involved, there is going to be a check at the end of this dismal rainbow.
Right.
There will be a check, and the rationale would be to get as big a check as you possibly can. Well, you do that probably the same way that the woman that was involved in Pete Diddy's situation is. You shock and awe. You put that complaint together, make sure it's something that shocks and forces those who read it to drop their jaws in awe of whatever they read in the four corners of those documents. So let's just see what her motivation is. But when I say her, I mean the attorney. Ultimately, it's the complainant that's going to make the decision, right? But she highly influenced by her representation if she's like the average person. But here's the other wrinkle in this. It's not just up to complainant or her attorney. The feds are involved here.
That's right.
So even if, for example, Vince McMahon and WWE, because they're both going to have to, they're both being sued. Even if Vince McMahon wants to settle in order to keep this quiet and make it go away, you still have the SEC and the FBI. Not going to settle with them. Well, you may, but only at the end of a very, very tortuous process. That's going to get ugly. And that information will leak. The FBI, the feds talk to the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times and anybody else that becomes a tool, a valuable tool in their efforts to achieve their goals. If they've got their crosshairs on Vince McMahon, then they're going to continue regardless of what the civil lawsuit ends up being.
It's, I hate to use this term, but it is going to be fascinating to see how this evolves. I know this is a bit of a stretch, but Deshaun Watson, if you're a football fan, just the same, I think in the same month that Vince was accused of all of this originally, when all this trouble started back in June of 2022, Deshaun settled with like 24 women. 24 women had complaints. And I guess he wrote 24 checks, and he played the NFL this year. And for whatever reason, it doesn't feel like that is going to be the circumstance for Vince McMahon. And I know there's been a lot of people who were saying, oh, we knew for years it was an open secret. And you could even go see things like his old Playboy interview. That's worth a Google, or his interview on Howard Stern, and start connecting dots. But man, just reading the pages, it's, you see it from her perspective for the very first time, and it doesn't read very good at all. And my takeaway this past week on the Johnny Ace thing is, how many people inside the wrestling business do you think are going to consider him a victim? I mean, it feels like an excuse. And I wonder, is that what, if this does trickle down to other people, do they all just wind up turning on Vince and saying he did it? I mean, this is, in a word, ugly. No?
Well, and here, just to add to that a little bit, as an example, and again, this is something I read. I don't know if it's true. So I always preface things I say in situations like this, be clear that I'm not taking a position. And we certainly can't rely upon what we read in social media or even traditional media like the New York Times or Wall Street Journal or news outlets. Can't take everything they say at face value. If you're smart, you'll really think long and hard about taking any of it at face value and do further research if it's a subject you're really interested in, and look for other sources of information. That being said, all those disclaimers aside, one of the other things I read, I think it was yesterday, is that WWE corporate current management is taking the position that the former WWE before the sale and the transition, the legal department, general counsel, was unaware initially of those NDAs. That,
Oh yeah.
if I read this properly, that Vince McMahon and his attorney worked together to create those NDAs outside of the normal process. And Vince McMahon signed on behalf of the company, which he would clearly be able to do. That's the fact that WWE corporate, if indeed it's true, took the position of, we didn't have anything to do with that. Corporate didn't have it. That's not on us. That's on him. Wow. That's kind of a big damn deal too. That further complicates things. And it also suggests that WWE corporate strategy is going to be to distance themselves as much as they can from Vince McMahon. So we'll see.
Vice is reporting, and I guess they interviewed Kerry Goldberg, who represented the victims of Harvey Weinstein. Here's the quote. Goldberg noted other issues with the NDA, among them that the copy that the victim filed in federal court in Connecticut wasn't actually signed by McMahon in either his personal capacity or role as then chair of WWE. Normally, all parties would receive an executed copy of the contract. And it's interesting because he continues, or law professor Jody Short was interviewed by Vice and said, "It is my considered opinion that an NDA such as the one you sent me are unenforceable under common law contract doctrine. There is very little case law squarely on point, and litigating such a case would expose an individual to enormous cost and litigation risk." The idea being, quote unquote, they're not worth the paper they're written on. It's not just the paper. It's paper backed by an extreme asymmetry in resources between the two parties. So it continues to get ugly. The idea that Vince McMahon signed these on behalf of WWE, allegedly, we don't know, we haven't seen them, and didn't disclose it anywhere. So I think they say in the wrestling business, maybe Vince went into business for himself here.
And like I say, that just makes everything far more complicated, and the stakes get even higher. because I would imagine, again, I'm not an attorney. I don't want to try to sound like I know shit. I don't, but kind of just applying street smart common sense to the situation suggests that that is fraud, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's fraud. You're again, it's a public company. 25, 30 years ago, before it was a public company, you could get away with stuff like that. When you're a public company, the rules change. And to commit, financially commit, contractually commit, and do it outside of the course of normal business and doing it secretly, not involving your general counsel, whoa, that's another level of fuck. That's crazy.
Yeah, man, it's bad every direction you look, and it's one of those deals where the more you uncover, the worse it gets. And unfortunately, I feel like it's probably going to be the end of a lot of careers. And maybe Brock Lesnar. I want to ask you about that because he wasn't really mentioned in the Rumble. We've learned through the Observer that essentially they've just slid Braun into his spot. So when Braun was eliminated by Dominic Mysterio, that was supposed to be Brock Lesnar. So I guess, as the story goes, according to Dave Meltzer, it was supposed to be Dominic Mysterio and Brock Lesnar at Elimination Chamber and Gunther and Brock at WrestleMania, which has been a dream match that wrestling fans have wanted to see for a long time. But I don't know if we'll ever see it at this point.
No, you think they're doing everything they can to scrub them from the minds and memories of anybody associated with WWE. No, that's not going to happen. I sincerely doubt we'll see him in the UFC anytime again. It's the same company.
That's right.
Same people involved. So that's not going to happen. No, Brock is, barring something, earth shattering, which I don't even think is possible. I don't even have an imagination vivid enough to try to create a fictional scenario where this outcome is going to result in people saying, sorry, Brock, we jumped the gun. Come on back. And that's not going to happen.
It's weird because you've seen Brock sort of leverage both sides for so long with both WWE and UFC, and now they're all the same company. So it makes me wonder, is Brock just going to be a private person? Will we ever see Brock Lesnar in a professional wrestling ring again, Eric, anywhere?
Can't imagine it. I mean, maybe in Japan.
Yeah.
Because they're not, first of all, I don't care. The culture over there is so much different. They're not paying close attention. You don't have the political correctness. And I don't mean that in a derisive way. You don't have the kind of and awareness and focus that the media puts on things that we consume every day over there that they do here. So do I see a scenario where somebody could offer, Brock a big chunk of cash to go over and perform in Japan where the audience isn't going to be, turned off by it? Maybe, but look at Brock. I mean, and you pointed it out in our first attempt to do this show this morning. Brock's never been a public person. He's come out publicly and said he just doesn't like people.
Right.
First to be alone. When I joke around and say I live in the middle of nowhere, Wyoming, and I'm familiar with where Brock lives. I used to hunt up in that area and travel through that area for years. He's remote. He really is in the middle of nowhere. And I prefers that. So I don't think he's motivated to be a public person or is going to try to reclaim his fame, if you will, lack of a better term. And he's got enough money. He doesn't need it. Obviously, he was going to get back involved in the business again, but if you can put $5 or $7 or $8 million in your bank account after putting in a couple days work, who's not going to do that if you're physically capable of doing it? Whether you love the business or not, if you're smart, you'll do it. Stack that cash. Go buy another farm. Go buy another one of those $700,000 John Deere tractors or whatever they are. Plant more potatoes or soybeans or alfalfa, whatever it is you do on your farm. That's what I would think Brock's going to do. I don't think there's any motivation on his part to try to resurrect his career. A, doesn't need to, and B, doesn't like it anymore.
Well, I know we talked about it a lot last week, but I want to say again, I think a lot of times we fans, not you, but me, Eric, and everybody on my side of the fence as a fan and who's commenting on this and has an opinion on social media, just want to remind everybody that we're not just talking about the television characters that we've grown up with and that we enjoy watching on television or pay per view or buying a ticket to see. These quote unquote superstars go home to real families, real wives, real kids, real grandkids, real people they see at the local hardware store or church or wherever they're going. And they're all sort of affected by this. And I think that is the message that we all need to consider when there's lots of silliness happening about these conversations and the people and the things that's been alleged, that kids are going to jump on an iPad and Google their dad or their uncle, their grandfather. And man, it's not good for any of them. Cause as you said last week, they got to go to school and they're going to apply for jobs and they're going to have to make a resume with a certain last name. And whew, there's a lot of victims on this. And it's not just the people who are going to be named in legal documents. It's the households with these parties. It's just, it's bad from every angle, Eric.
And it's, and I said this last week and I want to reiterate it because you're right. I mean, it's the kids, as adults, you go through things in life, consciously or subconsciously, at least, that no matter how bad things are going to get, or you believe that eventually this too shall pass. That comes with experience. A 16-year-old kid doesn't have that experience.
That's right.
A 12-year-old kid doesn't have that experience. A 25-year-old young man or woman doesn't have that experience. So even though they're not involved, they're not named, but they're related either by friendship or by blood, in a way, not to equate victims here, but they're victims too. Different kind of victim, but they're victims too. And this is the part I immediately thought about even before we started recording last week. There are people that I know in WWE that I know are good people.
Yes.
I believe are good people that have been there for so long. And it's affecting them as well.
Yes.
Now they can resign, they can leave if it's so bad. But again, they shouldn't have to.
That's right.
It's and I'm not going to name names because that's unfair to them, but every one of them is probably walking around on eggshells, hoping that when that phone rings and that number comes up that they don't recognize, that it's not the FBI wanting to have a conversation. People that have been around there a long time are probably going to be
subpoenaed,
questioned,
one
way or the other by somebody, and nobody's going to want to do that. And they're living in sort of Damocles, whatever it was. That's to have that sword hanging over your neck, being fearful of that and getting sucked into something you had really nothing to do with.
Right.
Shitty as hell. Shitty as hell.
Well, listen, I don't know what to expect. I know that you and I are not experts in talking about things like this. So we wanted to get it out of the way right up top today. I knew there were new wrinkles. I fear there will continue to be new wrinkles. I, like you, want this to be put to bed. Again, not in an effort to hush anyone or silence anyone, but just to give some peace to all parties involved. And I'm talking about the defendants. I'm saying their families and, more importantly, the victims and their families. You and I took a little bit of criticism last week when you said, you just want this to hurry up and be done with. The idea being, I hope we can settle and move on. The idea being, we're not trying to minimize what happened, but I think everyone agrees that nobody wants these victims to have to be deposed and go on the stand and be cross-examined and have to relive all this stuff. It's, it'd be a lot better if they could find a way to find whatever resolution that is, whether they're looking to put somebody behind bars or get a check or both or whatever, whether it's civil or criminal or whatever. I'm like you, man. I wish we could just fast forward the ugliness, but it doesn't feel like that's possible anytime
You
soon.
know what? I don't think it is. No, it's not going to be. We're going to be talking about this for the next probably 6 months minimum, minimum. But I was thinking about this morning too. The I've been through a merger, two of them actually, technically two of them, but I've been through that process, and I've told a story before. You know, when I was at a Christmas party, and Ted Turner was there, Joe Levin was there, Steve Case wasn't there that night, and it was it was at somebody's house. President of Turner Broadcasting at the time was at his house. Very small group of people, and I remember being so excited at the prospect of the merger between Time Warner and Turner. And Joe Levin got up in front of everybody and talked about entrepreneurial spirit and culture of Turner Broadcasting, and Ted Turner himself merging with the longtime media chip powerhouse Time Warner. And it's the combination of those two cultures and the strength of those two cultures that are going to catapult this company to the next level, some bullshit like that. But I didn't know it was bullshit. At the time, I was standing there with my cocktail, with my wife at my side. I can't even believe I'm in this room. I'm 6 feet away from Ted Turner and Joe Levin. And I'm a part of this. And I was so excited because I believed every word. I believed it. I believed that Ted Turner and his entrepreneurial spirit and this, which was part of Turner Broadcasting. It's why I loved working there so much at the time. You know, and the combination of the strength of Time Warner, say, oh my gosh, this is going to be wonderful. And I remember a couple of days later, I'm in my office and I'm talking about it with somebody, older executive, had been around longer than me. And he said, Eric, don't get too comfortable. It's not going to happen fast, but you're going to find that probably within about a year, that's when you're going to know what this merger is all about. And what he meant was Time Warner acquired Turner, and there are two distinct cultures, very distinct cultures, business-wise. And the little culture doesn't influence the bigger culture.
Right.
It's the other way around. And I remember this, I'm going, man, that's kind of negative. Why would you say that? I'm thinking that. So why would you say that? Why would you approach an opportunity like this already jaded and biased towards its failure? And sure enough, about a year later, I started really noticing that entrepreneurial spirit that created Turner Broad, that created CNN, that created so many opportunities, that changed the world in so many ways because of the entrepreneurial spirit of Ted. He was fearless. Ted was fearless. All of a sudden, those people who I knew and worked with directly were higher up the corporate food chain than me. All of a sudden, they're wearing blue suits, white shirts, red ties, and wingtip shoes to work. Like, dude, what happened to the guy that showed up wearing jeans and a nice sport coat? All of a sudden, instead of emulating or modeling their professional existence after the entrepreneur Ted Turner,
right?
Now they want to look like their banker.
Mm-hmm.
And things change so dramatically. And it's tough. Cultural change and adaptation in any merger is always painful. You know, when we talk about, it starts off laid off and eliminating redundancies and all that, the human capital that is dropped off at the curb during the process. But it's also such a big adjustment, and you have fear and concern, paranoia, chatter. What's going to happen? You think your department's going to get cut? Are they going to cut our budgets? All of that fear-based kind of conversation is all part of a big merger and a transition. And it takes a long time for it to finally settle down. And people realize, okay, this is the new world we're going to live in. It doesn't happen overnight. So now you've got the Endeavor, WWE, TKO, whatever the acronyms are that we're talking about here. You've got this brand new company, this absolutely diverse cultures, wrestling culture and the WWE culture, now having to adapt to the Ari Emanuel culture. Very different. Ari Emanuel is as much of a powerhouse, probably more so than Vince McMahon was.
No doubt.
Now, on top of what you can expect anyway in a corporate merger, the cultural challenge, now you've got this on top of that. Oh my God, I can't imagine what it's like. I cannot imagine the stress, not just on people that were close to Vince, but everybody. Everybody is wondering, oh gosh, am I going to end up getting canned because of this? Anything I've read or heard, and I've talked to a few people that know Ari Emanuel pretty well and have worked with him time. He's an animal too.
You don't
He's
put
a
up with
beast.
that shit.
He is a beast. Much like Vince McMahon was a beast in the way he approached business. So is Ari Emanuel, maybe more so. So that's just going to create even more stress and tension for everybody.
Well, of course, the next question, I mean, this is what's been swirling is who knew what, when, and a lot of people are putting their tinfoil hats on and saying, follow the money. They announced The Rock comes on the board, announced the big new deal with Netflix. And then bam, a couple of days later, here's this lawsuit. And of course, the very next day, Vince resigned. And we know that they had an investigation back in 2022. And we know that Vince McMahon came back in January of 2023. And immediately Stephanie went home. And it feels like all of those timelines of events are going to be litigated, perhaps by the feds. And this is probably not what anybody signed up for. So it's going to be interesting to see how this news changes. We're not there. We're not on the inside. We don't know. What we do know is we're here to talk about wrestling today, and we're going to talk about the hot topic most wrestling fans are talking about right now. Is Cody the guy, or is it The Rock? But before we do that, we need to at least touch on a few news and notes from AEW. First out of the chute is Okada. Okada has been at the center of controversy, or not controversy, but conversation now for several weeks, because this is the end of his era in New Japan. His contract expired on January 31st, and now he is officially a free agent, or so we think. The rumor and innuendo is that he had told Triple H once upon a time during a conversation that he really wanted to perform at a WrestleMania. Interestingly enough, I actually first met Okada backstage at SummerSlam like 10 years ago. So he's certainly been around the business, as I
What was he,
understand.
like 12?
He's friends with Nakamura, and obviously we've seen, guys like AJ Styles and Finn Balor and lots of other talent who were New Japan regulars, even, Gallows and Anderson, and a bunch of other folks that he knows on the WWE side of things. But the talk is Tony Khan is probably willing to spend more money. I think Dave Meltzer's laid it out pretty clear that if Okada wants to be a bigger global worldwide star, he should probably go to WWE. If he wants an easier schedule and more money and maybe more freedom in his type of matches and maybe a lighter schedule, he should consider AEW. It's interesting though, because right now, it felt like WWE once upon a time would have been a no-brainer. Like, man, they've got all the momentum. But then you take a look over at AEW and they don't have this controversy. And they do have some of his friends like the Young Bucks, like Will Ospreay, like Jay White, and lots of other familiar names. Where do you expect Okada to go? And what do you expect his impact to be in America, one way or another?
I have no idea because I don't know the man. And I certainly don't know what his motivations are and his goals are. I agree with Dave Meltzer on this point. Oh my God, just hear myself say that. If Okada's goal is to become the biggest star he can, then there's not even a conversation to be had with AEW. But it's a tough call. I don't even think it's because of the controversy. I really don't. while this isn't going to blow over and it's not going to go away, WWE will be around for a long time. This is not something that could crater the company,
No,
right? I don't want to say they're too big to fail, but they are
they'll
so
survive.
big and so entrenched. They've got a $5 billion deal with Netflix. They're good for the next 5 years. They're not going anywhere. AEW, on the other hand, may or may not be around a year from now, 2 years from now. And if they are around, I suspect they'll be around,
Yes.
but they may not have television. Or if they do, it may be a significantly less of a platform than one they currently have. So it's not like, yeah, Tony Khan has whatever, he's got access to $1 billion or whatever, but that doesn't necessarily mean that everybody that's got a contract now can be sure that, if AEW doesn't get a renewal at Turner or isn't able to land another deal, doesn't necessarily mean your contracts are good as gold unless you've got some kind of guarantee from another entity other than AEW that ensures. And I heard, I'm not going to mention a name here, but I've heard that at least one person that I know fairly well, as do you, has that guarantee so that if anything happens to AEW, he's going to get paid anyway.
That's right.
Now, if talent does have that kind of language, if a number of the top talents have that, then good for them. They're smart. But that's not sure. AEW is not a sure bet at all, given where they are. And given where Warner Brothers Discovery is, they're talking about a merger with Paramount. All of those variables could put a significant damper on any enthusiasm that people have for AEW this minute. It'll change. Maybe Tony's big announcement is that they've signed and renewed with Warner Discovery or somebody else, and then everything I just said doesn't matter. But if not, it matters, and you'd have to consider it. I think AEW would be more, that issue aside, let's just set that off in the corner, pretend it doesn't exist. That issue aside, AEW is going to be way more comfortable for any new talent coming in. Easier schedule, less pressure, less competitive backstage. You don't have as many talents that your top level talents you're trying to break through and compete with for time and attention. All of those things make AEW a much more comfortable decision. And add to that Tony, at least initially, is willing to spend more money to get him. That's a comfortable decision. And it reminds me of something my wife said to me back in November that had a significant change on my life. Comfort is a thief.
Yes.
Just because a situation is comfortable doesn't mean it's going to result in the best opportunity or the best decision. Sometimes you have to put yourself in a very uncomfortable situation in order to reach your maximum potential. So again, not knowing Okada, I don't know if he's going to lean into the comfort and familiarity of it all or be willing to risk a lifestyle and an opportunity to play on the biggest stage and emerge as a much bigger star than he possibly could in AEW.
I want to talk about that because I, for one, don't think AEW is in any danger of ceasing to exist. But you mentioned, risk and play. Well, that makes me think about this weekend because the Super Bowl is here and so is Prize Picks. I'm so excited to tell you guys about this. I've had a blast this year with Prize Picks. This season was my first time tinkering with Prize Picks, and I had a blast. It is my favorite daily fantasy app. In fact, they're America's #1 fantasy sports app. They've got over 3 million members, and I think they're the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. You see, it's not you versus another player or a professional or a shark. It's just you against the numbers. You just pick more than or less than on 2 to 6 different player stat projections, and then you just watch the winnings roll in. The big game is right around the corner. Prize Picks is the easiest and most exciting way to turn every game-changing moment into 100x your money. With as little as 4 correct picks, you can turn $10 into $1,000. If Patrick Mahomes throws for more than 1 yard in the big game, you win on Prize Picks. That's right. You heard me. It's demon time on Prize Picks. You can now win up to 100x your money with as little as 4 correct picks. You can turn $10 into $1,000. Demons and Goblins are the newest and most exciting way to play at Prize Picks. Squares marked with red demons or green goblins get you different payouts. Now you can win up to 100x your money with as little as 4 correct picks. You want to play alongside some of their favorite players over at Prize Picks? Well, you can. Rapper Meek Mill's on there. Comedian Andrew Schultz, he's on there. Find them all under the community plays, under the promos tab, and you can see what everybody else is doing each week. Prize Picks even offers injury insurance. So if your entries stay in play, even if one of your players gets injured. So for instance, like football or basketball games, if you have a player who exits the game in the first half and he doesn't come back in the second half, well, that player projection won't count against you and the rest of your entry stays alive. As far as I know, Prize Picks is the only daily fantasy sports app with this sort of injury policy. Prize Picks is really simple to play. You can make your picks and submit your entries in like less than 60 seconds. There's quick and easy withdrawals. It's very easy gameplay. There's an enormous selection of players and stat types. And that's why Prize Picks is the #1 fantasy sports app. And once you have fun this Sunday, I want to mention they've got other weekly promotions that can lead to big payouts like Taco Tuesday. And each Tuesday, Prize Picks discounts select player projections of up to 25% to provide even more value. And now they take Apple Pay. That's right. Prize Picks offers Apple Pay for quick and easy deposits into your account, all in time for the big game. And if you're wondering, and I got to get Eric's pick on this, the line is out, Eric. It looks like the 49ers are a 2-point favorite. And of course, it's the NFL. So you could take a look at everything else. It all happens at Prize Picks. We want you to try it. We want you to check it out. We think you'll be glad you did. I'm looking to see what Travis Kelce's going to do. You know, I'm putting some money on Patrick Mahomes. I'm a big fan of Prize Picks. I want you to check it out and go right now to prizepicks.com/83weeks. Use our code 83weeks and check this out. You'll get a first deposit match of up to $100. That's right. Up to $100. You get a match. Go right now to prizepicks.com/83weeks. Use our code 83weeks and that first deposit match can be up to $100. And yeah, Prize Picks, man, it's the real deal. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. More than, less than. That sounds like something you would say, Eric.
And here's a different than your normal betting advice, because I'm such a prolific gambler. Whenever I make a bet, you know, I think it through, right? But like if you're betting and you know, now I'm not into this thing, right? I like to make bets every now and then just because it makes the game more interesting, you know,
Sure.
get some stakes in it, right? But if you're like hardcore and you're really into it, you consider what people eat for breakfast in terms of how it's going to affect your bet. Here's one for you. Patrick Mahomes' dad just got his 3rd DUI. Is that going to have any effect on Patrick Mahomes?
Oh,
Is he going to be worried about that? Is that going to affect his game? Bit of pressure.
go check it out. prizepicks.com/83weeks. Use the promo code 83weeks and you'll be able to bet on things like, will Patrick Mahomes have more or less than this number of yards? Will Mr. Kelce have more or less than this number of receptions? It's that simple. You just more than or less than. prizepicks.com/83weeks.
Is there going to be a bet for how many camera shots we're going to see of Taylor Swift? There should be.
Let's go ahead and take the over on that.
Okay.
So listen, I wanted to mention, you said, hey, if AEW is even around a year from now, just a quick Google search. It looks like Paramount has a market cap of $9.7 billion. Not saying he would, but hypothetically, you know, you could just buy the thing. I mean, that's the level of wealth we're talking about. I think AEW is going to be around as long as Tony and his father want it to be around.
No, it'll be around, but there's no guarantee that it doesn't matter how much money you have. If your business is dependent upon television and you can't get television, yeah, it'll still be around because money's not an issue. It doesn't matter to Tony Khan, presumably. But it doesn't mean that you're going to be able to continue to pay talent at the level you're currently paying talent. If you don't have television to support it, if you don't have that revenue coming in and you're producing a show for YouTube, yeah, you're still around, but it doesn't mean you're playing at the same level or being able to pay at the same level.
Well, we know for sure that Mr. Khan has shelled out some Monet for Mercedes Monet, the former Sasha Banks, allegedly is AEW bound. She's going to be making a big splash, according to the rumor and innuendo, in the month of March. There's been lots of speculation that they've been eyeing a date in Boston, and what a place to make a big debut. And it made me wonder, it made me think about the good old days of the Monday Night Wars. Whenever you would see someone jump from one promotion to another, Sean Waltman comes to mind. When he debuted on Monday Night Raw, or returned to the WWF on Monday Night Raw, I should say, he cut a quote unquote shoot promo on you and Hulk Hogan and WCW and got everybody talking. And I wonder, given the way she left WWE and what's gone on recently in WWE, do you expect her to channel her inner MJF and cut a promo that gets quite a bit of buzz for AEW?
I hope not, because it will hurt her. It will continue to hurt AEW, because that formula is obviously not working. It's not the first time we've heard people cutting promos on WWE and talking about the other company. It was so prevalent early on. It's one of the reasons I came out a couple of years ago and said, Tony, shut up and wrestle. Just do your own shit. Quit trying to make it sound like you're in a battle with the WWE, because you're not. You're on the sidelines. You're like that obnoxious little fuck on the side of the road, trying to pick a fight with cars that are passing by. Well, you're never going to really be in a fight, so you can mouth off all you want. And it didn't work. It got everybody's attention initially. Everybody got on board because there was so much goodwill. Everybody was looking for that Monday Night Wars kind of vibe. Everybody was hoping that we're going to revisit that vibe from in the late 90s. But you can't, because AEW and Tony Khan didn't go head to head. It's like me sitting in my living room, talking about how I could, kick Brock Lesnar's ass. Well, I can talk all that shit I want when I'm sitting in my living room, but if I was face to face with him, it wouldn't work out so well for me. So that kind of shooting on the competition only works if you're really in competition, not on the sidelines where it's warm and fuzzy and safe. It actually hurt AEW, just like I predicted it would.
Well, hang on now, Eric. You used to do that.
I was head to head, for God's sake. There's a little bit of a difference. Can you not fucking see the difference between being a little dwarf punk on the sidelines, calling people out, telling everybody you're kicking their ass and you're in competition, when you're really not? Now, I was actually competing head to head. I started my show 3 minutes before WWE did because I wanted to take advantage of the opportunity. I used my resource. I had the resources to do that. At the time, WWE didn't. So I took advantage of that resource. Why? Because I was head to head. When I called Vince McMahon out to a fight as a result of that shoot promo, by the way, that Sean Waltman cut, I did it because I was head to head. It was a real competition, not a cosplay competition, which is a perfect word for it. And it's been the perfect word. What Tony Khan's strategy about calling out the competition is, it's fucking cosplay. And it worked early on when there was all of this goodwill. But Tony Khan has shit the bed so many times in so many different ways over the last 4 years that nobody has any faith in him anymore. Or calling people out doesn't have the impact that it could have and would have if they were actually head to head. I hope she doesn't do it, Mercedes. I hope she doesn't, because it will hurt her. One of the criticisms I had early on, CM Punk, when the first thing he did was he came out to try to get himself over, starts taking shots at Hulk Hogan. That's what you're going to do to get over on your first night out? You're going to cut a dirt sheet Dave Meltzer fucking geek promo on a guy you've never met or work with because you want to endear yourself to the internet wrestling community and the Dave Meltzer universe? That was such a cheap, low-hanging fruit bullshit move that, in my opinion, at that time, it exposed Punk for what he really is on his own with a mic. That was weak as fuck. And if she comes out and does the same thing, I'm going to have the same opinion. And the difference is Punk is actually pretty decent at cutting promos. Actually could be very, very good if he's got the right material in it and a little bit of guidance. You've seen that. I don't recall ever hearing Mercedes Moné cut a promo.
Well,
she has. No, I'm not saying that derisively. I just don't remember ever hearing one. Now, maybe you have. You watch more closely than I do. I don't watch wrestling like
no, I'm not saying it like that. I'm just saying, listen, man, in WWE, you don't get to go out there and just shoot from the hip. I mean, I guess if you're The Rock, you can, or Stone Cold or whatever, but most of the time in WWE, a producer comes over and hands you 3 sheets of dialogue and says, "Hey, you got 3 hours, memorize this shit. See you in a little while." And in AEW, we're actually going to see the real person with a mic in her hand for the first time. And I know you're saying, oh, they shouldn't be taking shots and blah, 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 but they're doing it to super serve that audience. AEW has positioned itself as an alternative. People who were watching WWE and are trying to watch something different than. So why not, validate those people's opinions and get that cheat pop, if you will. And now let's get to the business at hand. I assume we're going to see something like that. And then she'll challenge somebody and then she'll show what we all know she's great at, which is being a damn good wrestler when the bell rings.
Yeah. And just like everything else that we've seen out of AEW, a week later, it won't matter because it's not going to grow the audience and all of this hype and all the anticipation and the big super surprise or whatever it is. When it's all said and done, all 3 of Tony's shows combined won't equal one Monday Night Raw rating.
So in your opinion, Okada nor Mercedes Moné are needle movers for AEW?
There's nothing going to be a needle mover until there's a drastic creative change. Until there's a drastic strategic creative change in approach, nothing is going to change. How many times do we have to see it till we go, it's not going to work?
So wait, are you saying
every time somebody comes over from WWE that's a big star, oh my gosh, it's going to be a needle mover. It move the needle just a little further to the dead side of the equation.
So in your opinion, you think the biggest acquisition rather that WWE or AEW rather could make? Let me start that sentence again. In your opinion, you think the biggest acquisition AEW could make is someone like an Ed Koskey or something like that? Like
that would be a huge move.
Yeah.
That would be a massive move in the right direction. My opinion would change at that point, provided Tony has the personal makeup to let Ed do what if it was Ed,
right?
Ed or somebody like him do what they're capable of doing, and Tony go do something else. Don't get involved unless you just want to sit and listen and learn. Don't even go near the process. Tony is horrible at creative, exacerbated only by the fact that he thinks he's good at it because he's been a fan since he was 14. That makes him even more dangerous. But if someone like an Ed Koskey were able to come in, that's that gigantic strategic creative change that I'm talking about. My feelings vastly different than they are currently.
Well,
but it's going to take that.
We know you have a great feeling about our personal friend Sting, one of the all-time greats, the absolute legend. They put a few more tickets on sale. They sold out. Put a few more tickets on sale. They sold out. The show continues to get bigger and bigger and bigger. Sting's last match, Revolution, coming to you at the very beginning of March. We're about a month away. It's going to be in Greensboro. The Go Home Television, both Dynamite and Collision, will be filmed right down the hill from my house here in Huntsville. I'll be there, and I encourage you to be there too. It's going to be television wrestling history, man. Sting's last appearance on TV as an active wrestler. But this week, we're seeing Sting do something he hasn't done before. He's challenging for the AEW tag team titles. It'll be himself and Darby Allin taking on Big Bill and Ricky Starks in a tornado tag team match. And boy, a lot of people who are old school fans are wondering, is this perhaps where the tag team streak comes to an end? Does Ric Flair turn on Sting and join the Young Bucks, who seem to be his opponent for his last match in Greensboro? What do you expect to happen this week? Will Sting finally win AEW gold? or we get a little turn in the Ric Flair Sting story. I mean, if we had to count on our fingers and toes how many times Ric Flair's turned on Sting, we'd run out. What do you think happens this week on TV with Sting and the tag
I don't
shows?
know. I've watched AEW in the hopes of trying to gain some insight as to what might be going on in Tony's mind creatively, to try to, to see if there's actually a hot button or a pattern of any kind. And I can't find it. I mean, I can't. And so I can't even begin to imagine what's going to happen. Here's what I hope doesn't happen with regard to Flair and Sting. I hope we don't see a Ric Flair turn. I really hope we don't. I don't think that's what the audience wants to see. They don't want it. Ric Flair I said this to Rick at night. Maybe I didn't say it directly to Rick. I might have said it to somebody else on the creative team, but I used kind of a grotesque analogy, which I happen to do frequently from time to time. From time to time, whatever. I said, Ric Flair, and this was like in 95 or 96. Ric Flair could come out to the ring with a pack of puppies, little furry puppies, pour gasoline on them, set them on fire, stomp them out on his way to the ring, and people would still cheer him.
I don't know about that.
Well, I don't know about that either. That's an exaggeration, but I was trying to make a point. Sometimes you have to exaggerate in order to make a point that cuts through the clutter that exists in most people's minds.
Sure.
So in order to cut through the clutter, I use that exaggeration, but the point is this. Ric Flair's been around for so long, nobody wants to hate Ric Flair.
That's true.
You just don't want to. And Ric Flair turning now on Sting at this match or any other time, I just hope we don't see it. Here's what I want to see. I want to see Sting in his last match when it's all over and done and he gets the win. I want to see Ric Flair holding Sting's arm up in the air, because that's an image. If they take that shot, if that happens and somebody gets that shot, that's an image that people will be collecting decades to come because of Sting's legacy, because of Ric Flair's legacy, and because that's what the audience will want. Audience is not going to want to see some bullshit flea market turn just for the sake of a turn. I hope it doesn't happen. Really.
I hope it does happen. I think Ric Flair wants to be a heel.
What is wrong with you?
Ric Flair wants to be a heel. He's better at being a heel. He is a natural heel. He wakes up trying to think about how to be a heel, and the promo he could cut, it would be a lot of fun. And there is a contingent of AEW fans and wrestling fans who've decided they don't like Ric Flair and they don't want Rick on TV. So lean into that and let Rick be a heel. I don't know. I'm looking forward to this weekend or this week's tag match. I couldn't tell you the last time I was really pumped about a title match on TV.
Rick wants to be a heel so badly. Why wasn't he a heel for his own last match?
He wanted to be, but we were like, you can't be. The people are going to cheer you no matter what. The damn name of the event is Ric Flair's last match. Now, if you watch the story, he was a heel the whole way through because he was he was smack talking Jarrett and then the way he traded Jay Lethal and all that, but it didn't matter because, as you said, that terrible bag of puppies example. But I do think in the moment, if he costs Sting some big opportunity, I don't know. We'll see what happens. This is why we watch. And we're going to be watching because I guess this Wednesday, as folks are listening to this, 2 days from now, it's been teased yet again. Tony Khan is going to make another big announcement. And it makes me wonder, is it going to be about the Young Bucks being the opponent for Sting and Darby Allin? Is it going to be about Mercedes Moné? Is it going to be about Okada? Is it a new pay-per-view? Are we going to get another event? I would think we're looking at another event announcement. I have zero insight. I haven't asked anyone, but usually when we get some sort of special announcement like this, or at least the last few times, at least I think it's we're announcing that tickets are on sale for Wembley, or we've got this Inoki tribute show or. So maybe there's another pay-per-view coming down the pike. Maybe it'll be in the month.
That's what the world is waiting for.
Oh, come on now.
I'm sorry. I just can't take anything AEW serious right now, unless there's a big change, like we were talking about earlier in creative. I just, is what it is. Nothing's going to change. The audience is continuing to deteriorate. Their live event gates are continuing to deteriorate. They're having a hard time putting 3,000 people in a live dynamite. They're having a hard time finding 3,000 people willing to go on a 2-for-1 basis. Come on. It is what it is. And I know you have a different relationship there, and you're a kinder, gentler person than I am just by nature. I'm just calling it down the middle like I see it. I can't take anything they do or say seriously, including the big announcement. God.
Well, I'd like to make a big announcement. This episode and Eric's Hard On for Tony Khan are sponsored by Blue Chew. Blue Chew is a unique online service that delivers the same active ingredient as Viagra, Cialis, and Levitra, but in chewable form and at a fraction of the cost. Take them anytime so you can plan ahead or be ready whenever an opportunity arises. And the process has never been easier. You sign up at bluechew.com, you consult with one of their licensed medical providers, and once you're approved, you receive your prescription within days. And here's the best part. It's all done online. So no visits to the doctor's office, no awkward conversation, no waiting in line at the pharmacy. Blue Chew's tablets are made in the USA, prepared and shipped directly to your door, all in a discreet package. Blue Chew wants to help you have better sex. So discover your options at bluechew.com. Chew it and do it. And boy, do we have a special deal for our listeners. Try Blue Chew free when you use our promo code 83Weeks at checkout. Just pay the $5 shipping. That's bluechew.com. The promo code is 83Weeks and you'll receive your first month free. Visit bluechew.com for more details and important safety information. And we want to thank Blue Chew for sponsoring today's podcast. All right. Now the part of the episode that a lot of my Twitter followers have been waiting for. I was pretty vocal on Friday night, and I tweeted when I saw the introduction of The Rock. Fucking lame. Very disappointed to see the way the story unfolded. But let's start at the beginning, because it all started in motion on Monday Night Raw. It felt like there was a change in creative. For 2 years, we've been told the story about Cody Rhodes finishing the story. The story being he was trying to win the belt his father never did. And as the legend goes, he made it very clear when he first met with Vince McMahon. Vince was recruiting him to come back to WWE. Vince actually flew to Atlanta to meet with him to get him to do this. And as I understand it, Cody took that same championship that his dad held up and thought he won in Madison Square Garden all those years ago, where that photo of Dusty holding the WWF World title was on Dusty's mantle in his bedroom. Cody never forgot that. And ring used belt collector Dan Lambert gifted it to Cody. Cody brought that belt, laid it in front of Vince McMahon, laid out that this is what I'm coming for. That's the story that's been told. That's the motivation to come back, to finish the story. And they have drilled that in our head so long and so well and so effectively that one of their biggest licensees, the 2K video game, put Cody on the cover. Not just on the cover, the entire campaign was based around finishing the story. To the point where the commercials that they shot with other female superstars like Bianca Belair and Rhea Ripley and Roman Reigns, they're all talking about finishing the story, including AI Hulk Hogan and AI Steve Austin, all talking about finishing their stories. So it felt like after Cody came back, sort of called his shot like Babe Ruth all those years ago, and tears his pec, gets back on the comeback trail, wins the Rumble, comes up short, has to get through Brock Lesnar, etc., wins the Rumble a second time, gets on the turnbuckle, starts pointing at Roman Reigns, claiming, "It's you, I'm coming for you." But the next time we saw Cody, he was interrupted by Seth Rollins on Monday Night Raw. And Seth Rollins would cut a promo saying, "You don't want the part-timer belt. You don't want the Bruno belt. You want the workhorse belt. You want the belt for the people who are actually here. You want the belt that I'm wearing. This is the belt that represents Dusty's legacy. This is the Dusty belt. This is the belt you should be after." It felt weird. It felt out of left field. And it didn't make any sense. Why would a guy who was champion, who's 0-3, Because Cody has beaten Seth 3 times at pay-per-view, including with one arm inside a Hell in a Cell. Why would the guy who knows he's 0-3 and has one leg say, hey, this is the belt you want? Make it make sense for me, Eric. Cody finished the segment by saying, I'll think about it. I know you saw that segment from Seth. And by the way, great promo from Seth. My man sold his ass off. But I can't help but think this was just bad creative. And they had to power through. But it felt weird. And even the crowd response live was like, what? This isn't what we've heard for 2 years. You saw the promo on Monday. What'd you think?
I mean, there's nothing you said I can disagree with. You know, it was so awkward. And again, you know, hats off to Seth, because Seth did his best.
Yes.
I mean, he poured himself into that promo emotionally as best he could, given the fact that it didn't make any sense. That's
right.
At the end of the day, if it doesn't make any sense, no matter how passionate you are about it, it's just hard to hit the right note. It just is. And Seth tried. And I think Cody did the best he could do, which is just basically stand there and let Seth lay out the narrative that will be presumably the premise of Cody's decisions going forward. It was awkward. It confused the audience.
Yes.
To your point. Their reaction was damn near non-existent. Awkward is the only word that I can come up with. And it made, at this point, saying this a lot as we talk about where we're going. And at this point, this past Monday, or in my case, this morning at 5:40 a.m. when I first saw it, because I had to go back and watch it on YouTube, it made no sense. It was a disconnect from everything, from the current story, from the characters. Point 0-3, bad leg, you know, all that. It just made no sense.
Yeah, I mean, why would a guy who knows he's 0-3 and knows he's injured, but he's going to power through, say, hey, you don't want that belt. Come wrestle me for mine while I'm in a diminished capacity and 0-3. That makes no sense.
Yeah, especially for a heel, right?
And by the way, I want to be clear. You said it. I said it. I want to say it again. We are not being critical of Seth Rollins' performance. I think you and I both agree. He's been one of the damn workhorses carrying the load for WWE for a long, long time. And there's an argument to be made that he is one of, if not the top 5 best wrestlers in the world at any given moment, even with a bad wheel. The dude is incredibly talented. Our buddy Kevin Nash even made the comparison last year and said, he's like a modern Randy Savage. He can work with anybody. He's got a good promo. He's got an over the top look. And he's going to deliver in the ring. Seth Rollins is an MVP. No doubt about it. But that creative sucked. And then on SmackDown, we see Roman Reigns come out and he has to respond to the promo that Seth Rollins did, saying that Roman's belt doesn't matter. And Roman cut a promo that shit all over that title. He basically called the Raw title the loser title, because he's beaten everyone who's challenging for it. So it's the loser bracket title. And he would point out that Seth Rollins says he works 10 times as hard and 10 times as many shows and 10 times as many matches as Roman Reigns. And Roman said, and I make 10 times more money. It totally neutered not only the title, but anyone who wanted the title. And then here comes Cody Rhodes. And Cody Rhodes announced his WrestleMania decision. He says, I'm still coming for you. I'm still coming for that belt, but not at WrestleMania. He sought counsel from someone who knows Roman very well, and Birmingham lost their mind. The Rock's music hit. It was an incredible pop. A friend of mine was there and said it's the loudest live reaction he's ever seen at a wrestling show in Alabama. Hard to argue that. The Rock himself got goosebumps and showed it to the camera. But boy, you want to talk about awkward. When he was in the ring with Cody, it looked like it was all over Cody's face. Rock approached Cody, shook his hand. They had a private moment where they whispered in one another's ear. And then Cody exits. And it felt a little bit like when Hulk Hogan handed the Ultimate Warrior the world title after WrestleMania 6. We see Cody taking that sad walk back up the aisle. I thought Cody did as good as he could with this. But clearly that struck a nerve to the point where if you watch that clip back right now, they've cut out Cody's conversation with Rock. They've cut out Cody walking out of the ring. And why did they do that? Because that video that they posted to YouTube has the most dislikes, the most thumbs down on YouTube in the history of any video they've ever posted to YouTube. So much so, they took it down. You can't even see thumbs up and thumbs down anymore, but there's your ratio. Yes, it got millions of views, but I got 97,000 thumbs up and 500,000 thumbs down. And for more than 24 hours, the number one trending topic was hashtag we want Cody. Can't believe WWE didn't immediately put that out as merch, but we know why. But let me just mention, if you're looking for a hashtag we want Cody shirt, I know where you can get one. boxofgimmicks.com or 83weeksmerch.com. We've got the Whoa Movement shirt and we've got hashtag we want Cody. Yeah, I'm not ashamed to admit, I want Cody to finish the story. I'm biased. I'm friends with Cody, but I'm also invested in the story. This is the first time they've made titles matter in a long, long time in WWE. And I'm getting a little tired of people saying, well, they're trying to end Hulk Hogan's number so Roman can be the third longest reigning champion in history, because Hogan's not the record holder. They don't talk about stats like this in baseball or basketball or football. Yes, it's important who's third and who's fourth, but the real run, like think about baseball in 98, Eric. People were talking about Roger Maris's record when they talked about Sammy Sosa and Mark McGuire. We're not talking about Bruno's record, talking about Hogan's record. None of that makes sense to me. I couldn't understand the promo. I don't understand why there's an about face. Cody was just at the Rumble. He just won the Rumble. Like if you're going to do this with The Rock, why not just have The Rock come out as a surprise and he wins the Rumble? He earned his shot. But I felt like they undermined the big gold belt. They undermined the idea of the Royal Rumble match. And they completely pivoted from a story that we were all invested in to the point that one of their largest licensees built their entire campaign around it. As I understand it, 2K is actively changing the campaign for that game right now. This is a major pivot, and I want to talk about it. But first, I want to see, what did you think of the promo with Cody and Roman and the introduction of The Rock in Birmingham on SmackDown?
I mean, clearly Rock's entrance, Rock is The Rock.
Yes.
Is the biggest star on the planet, probably in a number of different ways. Argue it if you're in the mood, I don't care. He is a massive, massive, massive star.
No doubt.
He got the reaction he got because everything he's achieved, contributed, and been a part of in professional wrestling for so long. So you're going to get that reaction. So let's forget about the reaction and get into the meat of the promo. It's interesting a couple things were interesting to me. When Cody basically said, how about Roman, just you and me? Heyman stuck around. Not sure why. That immediately I know it sounds like a really little thing, but they didn't give Cody that. They should have given him that. Heyman could have stuck around for a minute and Cody should have said, I mean, everybody. Number one. Would have liked to see that. I cannot wrap my head around the premise, meaning I'm going to give somebody else a shot at something that meant so much to me. I cannot wrap my head around. As much as I'm very supportive of WWE creative, particularly in the last 12 months. I've been critical of it previously, but the last 12 months, the Bloodline storyline, 18 months really, it's just everything has been so good that when I saw it, I was so confused by it. None of it made sense on the one hand. But I've had time to think about it. And I've read a lot of the online chatter. motion, 500,000 dislikes. I get all of that. But I'm optimistic. I'm choosing. I'm not subconsciously optimistic. I'm not optimistic by default. Anybody that knows me knows that. But here's the analogy I thought of today. You go to a movie, sit down with your popcorn, date, friend, whatever. Go by yourself. Sit there with that popcorn. You've been looking forward to seeing this movie for a long time. You've seen the trailers, done a great job promoting the movie. You are prepared to love that movie when you sit in that chair. You order 2 popcorns. That's how excited you are. OD on buttered popcorn. It's not even real butter, but whatever. You got your popcorn, you sit in, you've seen the previews of coming attractions. You've seen a little vignette that talks about turning your phone off so you don't piss off people around you. Then the music starts. Boom, you open up in the opening scene of Act 1. And that movie grabs you, man. You are so glad you went to that. You came to this movie, validated everything you were hoping it would be. You get into that second act, and now you're at the edge of your seat. Oh my gosh, where's this going to go? Your hero, protagonist, your baby face, if you will, whatever you want to call it. Everything is going the way you hope it would go. And your hero is overcoming the obstacles one by one by one, whatever that is, whether it's a big green monster or a flamethrower, some mean little person, whatever it is, man, your hero is overcoming everything they throw in his or her way. And now you're getting warmed up. You're into the third act. You know this is a 2-hour movie and there's 20 minutes left, and you're so excited because you're finally going to get what you've been waiting for, because there's been great story, massive anticipation. The acting, the action is so good. You believe what's happening. You've allowed yourself to get sucked into the journey of your hero. And you're only halfway through your popcorn. You're so memorized by everything that you see, you can't even eat the popcorn. That's how excited you are. You've got 20 minutes to go, and then all of a sudden, there's a plot twist. Change. Something you didn't expect. Oh my God, my hero's not going to. This is not what I wanted to happen. Son of a bitch. And you throw that popcorn, it bounces off the head of the old man sitting in front of you. He turns around, gets pissed off, realizes he'll get his ass kicked, so he shuts up, and you throw another bowl of popcorn, box of popcorn. You are hot, and you get up and you walk out of that movie. You leave your date. Your date sitting there going, what in the hell? I don't even want to get in the car with this idiot. He's overreacting. It's a movie. And you get home. Date calls you the next day. Friend, whatever. Says, man, you should have stuck around. That movie was awesome. What do you mean it was awesome? How could it be? And then you proceed to hear how the movie ended.
Right.
And lo and behold, you were the victim of a finely crafted plot twist. Because just when you think you know the answer, as Roddy Piper would say, they change the game. Change the question. They change the ending. It's a plot twist. That's what they're supposed to do. Now, I know I'm being overly optimistic, perhaps in the minds of some, but I have confidence in the people involved. They have earned my confidence. Not that they give a shit whether I have confidence in them or not. Clearly not. But I have confidence in them. I believe that the same people that crafted some of the best storylines I've ever seen in wrestling, particularly the Bloodline, those same people still work there. Triple H, Paul Levesque, the guy that everybody's been talking about in such high regard over the last 12 months, he's still there. He hasn't changed. What's changed is the situation. The situation has changed. Nobody voted for this. Nobody raised their hand in a meeting a couple months ago and said, hey, I got an idea. Why don't we just have this whole thing blow up in our face and all this negative press and FBI and SEC and horrible allegations. Nobody wanted this to happen, but it happened. And now we're in a situation where you've got probably crisis management teams working 8-hour shifts, 24 hours a day, trying to figure out how to manage this insanely unprecedented situation, which is very, very serious. but you've also got a creative crisis going on in creative. Excuse me, a crisis management issue in creative, just like you have a crisis management issue in public relations.
Yes.
And now, these two, now you're going to have a nexus of PR crisis management and creative crisis management. What do you do? This is like the most uncertain, I think, WWE's been in maybe in forever, in such a short window of time. This is massive uncertainty. Nobody knows what's going to happen next. What do people do in times of adversity? Financially, what do? You diversify. You don't want all your money sitting in one place. You want to spread your risk around. You want as many options financially as you can get in the face of adversity. So what has WWE done? They brought in The Rock. They're giving themselves as many options as they possibly can in the face of the adversity that none of them wanted or voted for. And oh, by the way, how many weeks do we have between now and WrestleMania? 8, 7?
Yeah, it's like 2. It's like 2 months. Yeah.
All right. So you got 8 weeks of television.
And a pay-per-view in Australia.
And a pay-per-view in Australia. So folks, don't throw your fucking popcorn.
Well, hang on now, Eric. Hang on. Let me just say in a loud and clear voice, this ain't a plot twist. Now, might it become one? Yes.
That's my point.
But I want to remind everybody that 10 years ago, and I mean 10 years ago, everybody talked about CM Punk walking out 10 years ago. Why did he walk out? Because of the way the WrestleMania card was explained to him the day after the Rumble. Does that sound familiar? They're doing it again 10 years later. And at the time, people blamed Vince McMahon. He's not there now. But the result was the fans revolted. And it changed. And Daniel Bryan got his moment. But the original plan was Batista and Triple H for the world title at the end. And it wound up turning into a 3-way. And Daniel Bryan walked out with both titles. He got the yes movement and the moment that the fan base wanted. I believe, I don't know this, but I believe this was the plan when The Rock came back to WWE. And I don't mean on television. I mean when he joined the board. I mean when they locked down the Netflix deal. All of that makes sense to me that this would have been decided at that point. Because to be clear, you and I have said multiple times on this podcast, the Bloodline is the best story in the history of WWE. But I want you to answer honestly, Eric. Do you think the Bloodline story was hotter now or a year ago with the Sami Zayn story?
It was hotter.
Absolutely. It cooled down. And this is the big payoff for the Bloodline story. If that's what it is, I love it. Sincerely, I do. Because you've said on this show that was one of the biggest missteps with the NWO. You didn't have the proper way to blow it off. You didn't provide real closure to the NWO angle. I am all about that. But I can't help but wonder if this is a PR move by the WWE. Now, we made this analogy last week on the program that when Papa John's got in trouble because the owner did some things he wasn't supposed to do and said some things he wasn't supposed to, nobody's supposed to, on tape, they went out and they hired Shaq, one of the most lovable spokespersons or spokespeople in all of America. And now Papa John's is enjoying great success. It feels like this was a great PR move for The Rock, who needed a win and can go back and always pull with that WWE audience back in. And WWE needed him with knowing what was coming. I'm not saying they knew when, but they were privy. They did an investigation in June of 2022. This is going to come out eventually. They were waiting on the other shoe to drop. Who knew when it was going to? That'll all come out in court one day. But it felt like a mutual PR move. And hey, we'll just do this. And I suspect, I don't know this, but I suspect that The Rock has not been watching WWE television. I don't think he probably even knew about Cody finishing the story, et cetera, et cetera. I just don't. And I'm not saying that The Rock's not a WWE fan. My goodness, he dedicated a large portion of his life, the money, the miles, the bruises, the bumps. I'm a huge fan of The Rock, and I acknowledge he is the biggest star in the world. but I don't think he sits down and watches 3 hours of Monday Night Raw every week. I'm just being honest. And I think he inserted himself into the story because every other time he's done it, man, it's a huge pop. And it was a huge pop in Birmingham. But in fairness, there's always going to be a huge pop if it's a returning legend as a surprise. That's Pavlovian. That's built into us. That's what we love about wrestling. And I don't know that we love it being inserted into the story. So I'm hoping the idea that hashtag we want Cody, which is a shirt available now over at 83weeksmerch.com. I'm hoping between that and it trending on Twitter and the 500,000 dislikes and this story about the backlash being covered on TMZ, being covered on Barstool Sports. Like they're getting some more mainstream coverage about the backlash.
Oh, it was all over Fox News. It was in USA Today.
Yes.
I mean, it's getting massive mainstream coverage.
I think they got to pivot just like they did 10 years ago with Daniel Bryan. So to your point,
they have to pivot.
What's that?
How do you know this isn't? How do you know they see? This is where I differ, and this is where right now my mason jar, my trusty mason jar that's almost empty, that's still half full to me.
Okay.
As long as there's water in it, it's half full for me. I'm just not as convinced. I'm just gonna go out on a limb here. And I know I'm making an ass of myself for doing it. I know there's a lot of people that are gonna make fun of me for it. And guess what? It's like everything else that comes out of my mouth. I just do not give a fuck. Because I choose to be optimistic.
Yes, good for you.
This situation. I believe there will be a scenario, and there's a lot of different options. Tell my kids all the time in life, always make sure you have choices and options. Put yourself in a situation where you're painted into a corner and there's no way out. Always have options. And they have so many options. I see an option where Cody walks out much like Daniel Bryan.
I do too.
I see that.
I do too.
And irregardless,
that's not a word, but okay.
Whether it ends up being that, or and here's let me tell you just why. Other than the fact that my mason jar's half full, even though you all can see it isn't. I believe it is. I choose to believe that way. But here's another thing I believe. A year from now, won't matter much. Because Cody's going to be a huge star.
No doubt.
He's already a huge star. He's going to be a bigger star. Because if it goes the other way, and if I'm completely wrong, and I'm just full of shit because I choose to be in this case, Cody Rhodes is still going to be successful in this industry. And here's what Cody is going to realize at some point, way off in the future. He's my age. 40 years from now, whatever. He's going to look back at this situation. He's going to smile. Because he will know at that point that regardless of how many roadblocks anybody puts in front of him, no matter what circumstances prevail that are out of his control, he'll continue to be successful and he will overcome them. He'll learn that because of the strength of his character, his natural talent, and the talent he's developed to not let obstacles, challenges, or circumstances out of his control detour him, impede him from where he's destined to be. And when he realizes that he's developed the power to overcome those challenges, the obstacles, no matter who throws them in front of him, what throws them in front of him, has the ability to overcome it. And that's the gift, man. That's a gift. This situation is a gift to Cody Rhodes because whether I'm right and he comes out like Daniel Bryan did and he's got a both, which by the way, will get Cody Rhodes over 5 times more than if he just goes out and none of this stuff ever happened. Rock never shows up. Vince McMahon doesn't get into the situation he's in. We're just going about our business. And Cody has a match with Roman Reigns and Cody wins and he finishes the story. That'll be awesome if that were to happen. That would be awesome if that would have happened. But guess what? In the face of this adversity, with all of the emotion, including yours, big man, including yours, because you were riled up last night, with all of this emotion and Cody done dirty and we want Cody, blah, 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 finish the story. all of that pent up anger and emotion, and if it pays itself off with Roman Reigns finally getting into with Rock finally getting into the match with Roman Reigns, a match that everybody's been wanting for about 4 years, by the way.
Yes, absolutely.
Now they finally get that, but guess what else they get? They get Cody the next night, walking out with not just one, but 2 titles. Guess what? That could happen. So let's just hold on to our pop.
Listen,
a lot more TV to come.
I'm with you. I hope that's what they do. It is going to require a pivot. That was not the original plan, but thankfully, unlike at WrestleMania 30, WrestleMania, I want to remind you, is 2 nights. So there is a possibility Cody versus Rock, Roman versus Rock, Cody versus Roman, a 3-way dance. And oh yeah, there's that little pay-per-view in Australia where the rumor and innuendo is that Australia requested The Rock based on the deal they cut with WWE. Maybe at the time his asking price was too much, but now he's a member of the board and he just got $30 million worth of stock. And allegedly, Buddy Bryan is going to be in Australia too. He handles The Rock's business a lot of times. It seems to me like we're in for a fun ride. The road to WrestleMania just got a lot more.
That's what I like to hear. That's my Conrad. We're in for a fun ride. I like it.
I'm positive that they're going to pivot. I shouldn't say I'm positive. I think they have to pivot, because what you don't want is what happened this past Saturday night in Knoxville. They played a clip at a house show, a live event, as fans were filling in, of what happened last night as it was airing on SmackDown. And when The Rock came out, the entire crowd booed. Process what we're saying. This is the biggest star in the world, arguably the most beloved star in WWE history. People are thrilled that The Rock is there. They just didn't want him in this story. I think it was a misstep. I think they'll fix it. I think they'll recover. I think everyone will get what they want at WrestleMania. But I know what I want. I want what a lot of folks want. Hashtag we want Cody. Available now at 83weeksmerch.com.
Buy the shirt. Support the man. Buy the shirt.
I do want to ask, you tweeted out that some of this made you think of the Sting NWO storyline. You're uniquely qualified to make that comparison. Talk to us about that.
How many times have you heard me say that I value my mistakes more than my success?
Well,
because you learn more. And that's a perfect example. I compromised. I was faced much, say like, situation that WWE is in right now is nothing like the situation that I faced. And the night of the event, Sting showed up in my office along with Hulk Hogan, and we had to kind of lay out the finish, so to speak. Everything kind of got turned upside down in that moment. That was about 2:00 or 3:00, 2:00 in the afternoon, day of the event. So I had about 6 hours to try to solve that problem. WWE's got 8 weeks.
yes.
I compromised because I was faced in a situation. I was able to develop a compromise finish, and it left everybody disappointed. Immediate reaction. Go back and watch it. You and I have covered that show. You go back and watch it. People in the arena, venue, in the moment, they all cheered. They didn't even know. Fast count, slow count, Bret Hart, no Bret Hart, whatever. All they reacted to was the title change or the count. But afterwards, when all the information came in and everybody realized what really happened and what really didn't happen, because it was so different than what they wanted to happen. We told that story for, I don't know, 12 months, 18 months. Really, if you look at Sting showing up and having been doubted by the people, normally his peers and supporters and friends and all that. That entire story, however long it lasted, 16, 18 months, whatever it was, didn't matter. We built towards a finish. There was a decision that we made early on. This is what we want to have happen. We want Sting to come in and finally win clean. No disputes, no controversy, just flat out win. Finally, WCW gets its payback. And we muddied it up. But what I learned is you don't disappoint your audience. Just don't. Gary Considine, quote Gary once again, the audience votes with their remote. And I think it's a testimony to the creative team in WWE. It's a testimony to Cody Rhodes and everybody that he's worked with up until last week. They're so invested in the story and Cody finishing the story that you got the negative reaction that you got to 500,000 dislikes or whatever, and all the chatter in the audience. And where were they? Where they got that negative reaction for a live event?
Knoxville, Tennessee.
Knoxville, Tennessee. All that says to me is creative team that worked so hard and did such a great job leading up to this point. We're all still there. They're smart enough to recognize what I learned the hard way. I had 6 hours to fix my problem. They've got 8 weeks to fix theirs. They're more talented and smarter, and there's more of them that are more talented and smarter than I was at the time. I just don't have the fear that this is going to end up bad. I think it's going to end up fucking better than it was originally.
Well, the idea is we're trying to establish Cody as this underdog who's overcome so much, whether it was Brock Lesnar or getting screwed last year at the WrestleMania main event, or having to win back-to-back Rumbles, or wrestling with one arm. I mean, with that torn pec and a Hell in a Cell. So they're telling the story. But speaking of the story, I asked you about the Sting comparison. And of course, you and I had a pretty famous, or maybe now infamous, discussion about Starrcade 97. And someone tweeted out something pretty funny over the weekend that was relative to that. Not tanned enough, pal.
I was hoping somebody was going to bring that up. Yeah, you do. You know, I saw Cody in that promo for Monday night with Seth and again on Friday, and 10 game is a little soft. So work on that, bro.
It's going to be a fun ride. They're doing the big press conference in Las Vegas this Thursday. I don't know that we'll get all the answers, but let's remind everybody that, quote unquote, in storyline, The Rock has to earn his shot to face Roman. You don't just show up and get a title shot. So maybe they'll do something at Elimination Chamber. Maybe we'll find out more at the press conference this Thursday. But I, like you, have faith that they're going to pivot, because I still suspect this is a PR move. And the reason I say that is because I know there's a lot of people online who say, oh no, this happened because Punk got injured.
What?
No, I mean, maybe him wrestling Seth Rollins, but let's just say if Punk hadn't been injured, it was clear they were working towards him and Seth Rollins. And maybe that would have, I don't know what was going to happen, but maybe at the time, maybe Punk won the Elimination Chamber for the right to face Seth. But they started that Seth CM Punk storyline before Punk even worked in the freaking company. I don't buy that. And I think I would have been okay with the pivot to Rock had Rock won the Rumble, but to do it this way, it almost makes the Royal Rumble meaningless to me. Like either the winner challenges for the title or they don't. And I know you could say, well, he could pick, but that's not the story that we've been referencing. So I'm going to be optimistic. I'm going to go glass half full, and we're going to see how it plays out.
I love to hear that.
I do want to talk about some other things that have happened. You know, the moving and shaking behind the scenes. Rock is not only taking center stage on TV, but also in the boardroom. He's now a board member for WWE, or TKO more specifically. And there's not a single McMahon family who's on the TKO board now. Linda's not on it. Stephanie's not on it. Certainly Vince isn't on it. And not even Triple H is on it. Now, Triple H was on the board of WWE. He is not on the board of TKO. And there's a theory put out by Mike Johnson that perhaps Brian Gewirtz is here, or Gewitz, easy for me to say. Great guy, by the way, is in the mix. Mike Johnson wrote, Brian will be in the mix as the voice representing The Rock in the WWE creative process going forward. There are some who believe Brian will be around physically, at least for major shows going forward, and could even be there as plan B if Endeavor ever needs to pivot WWE's direction and go with a Dwayne Johnson back creative team down the line. And I'm going to tell you, that got my attention. First of all, let me say this. You couldn't have a better brand ambassador than The Rock. I know he had a little controversy with Oprah. I know the Black Adam thing didn't work out, and maybe he had a spat with that director and maybe it lost some money. I know the XFL is restructuring and lost some money last year, but that dude has so many more wins than losses. If you take a look at the scoreboard, everything he touches turns to gold, whether it's his tequila or anything else. So I'm confident that The Rock is going to be successful on camera and behind the scenes with WWE. And you couldn't ask for, I mean, this is a guy who not too long ago was being whispered about as being a potential presidential candidate. How could you not pull for that guy? How could you not want that guy to represent your brand? And if you were a WWE fan for the last 20 years, how could you not be excited about Bryan being back in creative? Bryan was responsible for some of our absolute favorite WWE moments. You worked with Bryan a little bit. That dude is incredible at his job, is he not?
Absolutely. The most exciting, rewarding, fulfilling, whatever other adjective you could come up with, moment I've ever had on camera in any company was created by Bryan. That was the
reveal,
the old man gimmick with the mask. That was all Bryan.
The Billy and Chuck wedding.
Bryan is so good. So good. And he's so level-headed. He would be a massive asset to the creative team, whether he was leading it or a part of it. I don't know where that's going to go. This is kind of the first time hearing about that aspect of it. I did read, I think, that he was going to be representing Rock, and I think that makes sense. I don't think Rock's going to be sitting in creative meetings all week long. But so, I mean, it makes sense to me, but he's so gifted that that's a big plus for WWE. That's a bonus of getting Rock on your board is getting Bryan on your creative team. Absolutely.
Well, let's also talk about the way this board changed, because I'll be honest, it sort of made me sit up and pay a little more attention when I saw that Bryan might be a plan B. I say that because we know who plan A is, and that's Triple H. And I know that there are a lot of wrestling fans who think everything's wrestling and just believe everything from back in the day. But I've had more than a few people show me clips of Bret Hart talking about the relationship between The Rock and Shawn Michaels and Triple H when The Rock was a young superstar in WWE. Let's roll that.
And dressing down poor Dwayne, he was the Intercontinental Champion. He's the young guy with getting his big first break in the business and stuff, and the nicest guy in the world. And Shawn came in and just dressed him down and chewed him out. And I believe he told him to never do a drop kick off the top rope ever again, because that was his move. That was what he was mad about. And then he slammed the door and walked out. And Rock was just, because Shawn had a lot of weight, he was a pretty important guy for the company and a veteran kind of guy, dressing him down like that. And there he was apologizing and said he didn't know it was, like he thought it would be okay. And I remember the door closed after Shawn left, and I said, that's bullshit. That is total bullshit. I said, nobody owns the drop kick off the top. Like you can do that. Owen does it all the time. Why has he never cut a promo on Owen?
Yeah.
I said, they're just busting your chops.
Yeah.
And they're trying to work on you. And Triple H was the same. He was always out to get Rock. Shawn was out to get him, and they just worked on him and worked on him and worked on him. And the guy left they was still in the doghouse with those guys. They wanted him as bad as they wanted me out. Like they were after him. And for me, like maybe a year later, he started to get his break and started to take off in WWE. And I'm so glad he overcame their petty bullshit that they were trying to do all the time to him.
Yeah. Just jealousy?
Just jealousy.
So listen, I know that's a little silly and maybe it's a little tinfoil hat, but there's a whole lot of people who say that in real life, they had more than just a professional rivalry. I mean, JR's talked about it on his podcast back when they were both trying to jockey for position as to who was going to be the next guy as Intercontinental Champion in 1998. And I just find it interesting that Well, Hunter lost his board seat in September. Rock got that spot in January. Rock's agent, Endeavor. Where did Nick Khan used to work? Endeavor. Who put together the SmackDown deal for WWE? Nick Khan of Endeavor.
Oh, Nick Khan was CAA, wasn't he?
It's all the same thing. No,
Go ahead.
Well, here's what I mean. Nick Khan's sister is the showrunner was the showrunner for Young Rock. There's a relationship with Nick Khan and The Rock. I don't think that's a secret.
And Ari Emanuel.
When The Rock went to visit Deion Sanders at College Game Day, Nick Khan's there. Just find it interesting. Hunter lost his seat. He's no longer on the board. He's head of creative director, not a board member. But The Rock is there. Who was The Rock? Who was Nick Khan's old boss? Ari Emanuel. They did so many deals together. They have a long-standing history, Ari and Nick. And now Hunter answers to Nick. Nick answers to Ari. And The Rock's the biggest star in the world. And in the agency game, not on the org chart, but talent hires an agent. So in a weird way, Ari works for The Rock. The Rock has all the leverage. This is The Rock's WWE. And for Hunter to lose his seat, and now there being a rumor, hey, Brian might be plan B. It's like, wow, yikes. And from an Endeavor standpoint, that Netflix deal is huge. Because if The Rock's on the board, gee, do you think The Rock's going to wind up making some movies for Netflix? Doing some programs for Netflix? Are people wearing their tinfoil hat, Eric? What do you think about all this?
I think a bit. Yeah.
Okay.
I think a bit. And look, I don't know to what degree, but I guess human nature allows me to believe that there may be some long held resentment there. I mean, it's happened in the past.
That's life.
There are certain people. Yeah, I mean, it exists. There are certain situations where if I was thrust into it with somebody that I don't trust, not to name names, it would be an uncomfortable situation for me. And if I had leverage, I would do what I could to mitigate that. So, yeah, I guess it could be true that perceived heat, Rock and Hunter, based on something that happened 25 years ago. I guess it could be true. It's human nature. Never bet against it. The rest of it, the politics, the relationship between Nick Khan and Ari Emanuel, I think it's a little muddy, to be honest with you. Suffice to say right now, everybody's working for Ari Emanuel, but indeed, Rocky is probably Ari Emanuel's biggest client. So there's that dynamic, and it is a fact. The degree to which it has influence over decisions, none of us know. Can only guess from the sidelines, but it is an interesting situation. And when you told me about Brian and somebody else's quote, I think it was Mike Johnson.
Yes.
Who's been on the money, by the way.
Yes.
Kudos to Mike Johnson. Kudos to Mike Johnson, PW Insider. Been on the money with this stuff. I think it's a necessary plan B. And as much as I don't want to venture back into this territory, I have to at this point, because the fact that Paul Levesque was on the board during a time there was a vote against Vince coming back to bring him back. The fact that Paul Levesque is married to Stephanie McMahon. The fact that Levesque spent as much time as he did in terms of proximity to Vince McMahon is a likely candidate for a conversation in terms of everything that went down. And it would be absolutely a breach of corporate fiduciary responsibility for them not to have a plan B, because you don't know what you don't know at this point.
That's very fair.
So I choose to kind of acknowledge but not put much stock into any of the tinfoil hat, political espionage nonsense. I understand why people do, and it's not that it's not interesting. I just don't buy into it. I look at the more logical, practical moves that they have to make, and having Brian there, again, you're faced with an uncertain situation. The only way to combat an uncertain situation is to have as many options and assets at your disposal as possible. That's the way I look at it.
It's going to be really interesting to see how all of this shakes out, because we don't know, what's yet to come with this investigation from the federal government and this civil lawsuit and all the fallout. But at the same time, we've got everybody talking about what happens on camera. And maybe that was the idea behind bringing back The Rock. I don't think or anyone could have imagined there'd be this amount of backlash, because I think people are genuinely excited to see The Rock. They want Rock versus Roman. They want that match at WrestleMania, but they also want Cody to finish the story. WrestleMania is 2 nights. We'll see what happens. Rock, by the way, got $30 million worth of stock for this move, but he also managed to get a whole boatload of trademarks. We've heard the rumors over the years that you see there, if you're watching along with us, we have the full, and we'll throw the link up here, but you're talking about an absolute ton of not just domestic trademarks, but international trademarks. I think people just sort of really quickly thought, oh, he got the name The Rock. No, he got a lot more than that. Rock put together a great deal. He's got a ton of leverage with WWE, and he got a great deal. So he got it all back. The rumor allegedly was that whenever The Rock would use that name in a movie, Vince would get an executive producer credit, and then of course he'd have to kick in some cash for Vince McMahon. Pay tribute, I think they used to call it in the Mafia. What do I know? But I find it interesting that the timing of all of this happening, and Lee Fitting, who, as I understand it, was rep by Nick Khan, and he was the sort of brains behind College Game Day for a couple decades. All of a sudden, just a few days before football season in 2022, he's out. Nobody's really said why, but it was an abrupt ending. And now he's in the Kevin Dunn spot, because after all these years, Kevin Dunn is leaving. It feels like, in more than one way, the winds of change are here for WWE. And we fans, we don't think about who's on the board. We just think about, hey, who's running creative? And right now that's Hunter. But if it's Brian, I don't think that's a bad thing. I'm not anti-Hunter. I think what he's done is fantastic. I don't want to see Hunter squeezed out. I want to be clear about that. But Brian, man, my goodness, the idea that he's back is nothing other than a positive. Let's run down some of the board members. We mentioned, that this time, not too long ago, you had a bunch of McMahons on the board. We've got a before and after graphic we can show you of who was on the board before and who's on the board now. And I briefly want to run through some of their experiences. As you said, Nick Khan was at CAA for 8 years.
He was the head of CAA Sports.
He was the co-head of the television department. He did a bunch of stuff there. And of course now, he's the CEO of WWE. He was the co-CEO before. But if you take a look before, you had some names that you would recognize, like Michelle Wilson and George Barrios. And, of course, Steve Koonin, who you've mentioned before, Paul Levesque, Nick Khan, Stephanie McMahon, Vince McMahon. But now take a look at the new board. No McMahons. The only quote unquote wrestling person there is Dwayne Johnson. That's not to say that there's not a whole bunch of other really talented folks. Steve Koonin was there then, now, forever. He's the CEO of the Atlanta Hawks. Jonathan Kraft is there though. He served as president of the Kraft Group since July of 95. Sonia Medina is there as well. And she's been the president and CEO of Reach Resilience. Before that, she was the co-founder of Greenlight Growth Capital. But notice there's a lady there, Sonia. I think that matters with all the news we've heard about WWE recently. Nancy is on the board as well. Nancy Tellem. I think I'm saying that right. She's the executive chairperson and chief media officer of EKO, or Interlude US. It's a media company. Carrie Wheeler, another lady who's the chief executive officer of Open Door Technologies. And those are some big time players that are on the board. In addition to Brad Keywell, who's the founder of Uptake Technologies, which is an AI software company. You think that's going to come in handy in the future with WWE?
That's cool.
How about Egon Durbin? He's the co-chief executive officer of Silver Lake, which is a global tech investment firm. Peter Bino, I screwed that up. CB are his initials right in the middle. He's had a bunch of different roles: senior advisor and equity partner at DLA Piper LLP, which is a global law firm. Probably going to come in handy right now. Mark Shapiro is the president and chief operating officer. One of the big cheeses here. Has been the president of Endeavor since December of 2018. And then Ari Emanuel, the head cheese CEO. He's ran Endeavor since October of 2017. This is a really, really strong board. I don't think that can be debated, but it is a different WWE. And it's weird to see that board list. No McMahon's. Paul's not on it either, but The Rock is. Fun, huh?
You love that point, don't you?
Well, I just think it's great because here's the thing. I wonder, would they have gotten this deal with Netflix if The Rock wasn't on it? Like, you know, for sure now, because I mean, listen, The Rock's the biggest star in the world. If you're Endeavor, guess what? You don't want him to leave and go be rep by another agency, right?
Yeah, that's
so if you give that dude a bunch of stock and you put him on the board, you've sort of sent a message. He's here to stay. And that's great for WWE, but it's also great for Endeavor. It's great for TKO. And more specifically, it probably afforded the opportunity for Netflix, because if you've got TKO with a $500 million deal from Netflix, you might get maybe a brother rate out of The Rock, because that's going to be good. He's a major shareholder now and he's on the board. I just think this is a fantastic move for WWE. And high five and kudos to Nick Khan. I mean, I don't think he's got enough credit for this deal and the way you can sort of make The Rock sticky to Endeavor and secure the Netflix deal for WWE all at the same time. It's really,
yeah. And I mean, if you look at it just on a commission basis, is $30 million really that much of a commission on a $5 billion deal? You know,
imagine how much that. Now I know there was some bad news a few days later, but look at what that stock did in just the first few hours after that announcement. Like that 30 million is going to continue to get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. It's going to be interesting to see what happens, but it is a brand new era in WWE. We got a few questions we need to hit. We've got some from our live chat. I want to jump over there right fast. We've got Josh Henney.
Real quick, could you grab a couple of those questions? I absolutely have to use the restroom real quick. I'll be right back.
While you do that, let me tell everybody about STARRCAST coming down under. It's coming down under on April 11th through April 14th. I'm going to be there, and you should too. We're talking to you, Ballarat, Victoria, Australia. It's our first ever international STARRCAST. You heard from Bret Hart earlier. Well, guess what? Bret Hart's coming. And it's going to be the first time he and I have ever been on stage together. We're going to talk about the 30th anniversary of his WrestleMania 10 match with Owen Hart. And as you might imagine from hanging out with Eric, I can't wait to pick his brain. Not only that, there's going to be a Q&A opportunity. If you ever wanted to ask Bret Hart a question, well, now's your chance. We're going to have that and more than half a dozen other stage shows. But I'm so pumped to be on the stage for Bret with something we're calling Hitman, an evening with Bret Hart. That's what you can expect at STARRCAST. Meet and greets galore, meeting all your favorites, seeing the matches and watching the shows. Wait, matches? What matches? We got not one, but two shows. Mickie James is going to present HER, which will be an all women show. And Bret Hart is bringing the Australian Stampede, a super card of wrestlers from all over the world. You don't want to miss it. I encourage you to pick up a platinum or a gold bracelet. There's something for everybody across the 11th, the 12th, the 13th, and the 14th, and you don't want to miss any of it. If you've got a bracelet, you get access to all the panels, and guess what? The wrestling shows too. Check it out, starrcast.com for more information. That's STARRCAST.com. That's starrcast.com. You'll see some of your favorites like Bret Hart, Mickie James, Shelton Benjamin, Chris Masters, and so many more. We're announcing folks all the time over on Twitter at STARRCAST Events, or you can just pick up your tickets now at starrcast.com and stay tuned we've still got a few more tricks up our sleeve. Speaking of up our sleeve, I want to mention that Fanatics has entered into a partnership with us here on 83 Weeks, and it's an easy way to support your favorite podcast. Now you can shop for official WWE gear and apparel by using our special URL. That's shopwrestlingmerch.com. Shopwrestlingmerch.com. Or if you're watching along with us on YouTube, hit that QR code that's up on the screen now, or check out the description below for the link. We'll also have it up on all of our socials. Shop with confidence for your favorite WWE superstar tees, hoodies, caps, belts, and more with WWE Shop. And use our special link, shopwrestlingmerch.com, to support the show. That's shopwrestlingmerch.com. I think you're going to dig it. We got some questions from our live group chat. And by the way, when you join up over at adfreeshows.com, you not only get the shows early and ad free, you get to be a part of the live studio audience. Josh Henney wants to know, do you feel The Rock coming in as a work to turn him heel, taking Cody's spot? A lot of potential storytelling, in my opinion. I want to see this play out. I can't imagine The Rock wanting to be a heel, right?
As a performer, I could see him wanting to do it because it's much more fun being a heel than it is a babyface.
But isn't Roman a heel?
Yeah, kind of.
It just feels like heel versus heel will be weird.
Yeah, it'd be weird. But at the end of the business-wise, it would make no sense. My opinion. Not in the Hollywood industry anymore, and I don't know anything about the movie business and all that, but it just doesn't seem like it makes sense for Rock to portray a heel at this point.
Dion Sutton, boy, he's been thinking. He's got a question. He says, what if Cody wins the world title and then Damian Priest finally cashes in and beats Cody, and then Cody challenges the winner of Rock and Roman on night 2?
One of those options.
Yeah.
I've seen some interesting, hey, what ifs on social media. And they were the kind of ideas that if I was, somebody brought up earlier today, I can't remember his name. I wanted to remember it because it was such a good idea, but it was just thrown out there. Hey, what if Undertaker shows up and faces Ron Breakker? Wow. That'd be fun. That'd be cool. Undertaker coming in would certainly add another level of interest and kind of be a Band-Aid temporarily on this whole situation. I don't know that it changes the lineup or the dynamic, but it's just another thing that could happen. Good for Braun Breaker. Great way for him to break his way in, to the main roster, permanent. But there's so many options available right now. We talked last week or the week before about, the depth of talent and how sometimes that can be a real burden, keeping everybody happy and satisfied and all that. But man, this is a perfect example of why, you're paying a lot of money to have a lot of that top talent. You're not necessarily utilizing them all at the same time, but man, it sure is great to have them there.
Here's an interesting question that everybody's been talking about on social media from our buddy Denovius Mac. He says, #Ask Eric, have you heard the rumors about WWE possibly unifying the titles again? Now, I don't know if that's an actual rumor or if fans have just booked it, but the idea being, if Roman is going to work less and less and maybe take some time off, perhaps at some point they could unify the titles. The idea I think Denovius is pitching is, if Cody wins the big gold belt from Seth, at some point he could still face Roman, still finish the story, and unify the titles. What do you think about that? Should they unify the titles?
That.
Okay.
I have no idea. I don't pay attention to rumors. And I haven't heard that one to ignore, but it's just another example of what could happen. And what a great way to check all of the boxes. It's like, you got 4 million people responding to what I don't know what number 2 is. What's the second most popular YouTube clip out there? I don't know. But if Rock from SmackDown is number 1 at 4+ million right now, even those 500,000 people that disliked it all, what a way to make everybody happy. Everybody wins. The possibility is there. The options are there right now. And the options and the time.
Mike,
I wish I had the time to go to Vegas.
Oh man, can you imagine?
I would love, if I had the time, I would go. I wouldn't even tell anybody I'm going. I would just go. I want to be incognito, put on a wig, Does it would fit now because I don't have any hair? This, I could put a wig on. I could show up looking like a dancing girl. Nobody would know.
Well, let me mention, you can go. It's just $2,000. They're selling tickets to this. Can you believe that? How cool is that?
I think it's very cool. I don't know that I want to go bad enough to spend $2,000 to go, but I would really love to be there and be a fly on the wall to see the reaction.
Oh,
that you're going to get there and to see, because I mean, we could have a pivot, as you pointed out. We could have that as early as the press conference.
We could have that as early as tonight, as folks are listening to this on Raw. There could be seeds planted tonight, and we see something else happening at the press conference on Thursday. And you don't think on Friday they're going to reference it? Like, these are going to be highly rated shows that's got everybody buzzing. This is how you create buzz. And there was a question that was submitted to us from Comics Villain over on Twitter. He says, do you think the easy for me to say, the Rock Cody issue is actually intentional to drum up more support for Cody, to bring attention away from Vince, and to get more eyes on WrestleMania 40? I don't know if it was intentional, but it's damn sure working out that way, isn't it?
I see. That's what I'm leaning that way. I don't think this is surprising to some people in WWE as it is to all of us, including probably Cody. I'm not so sure that this wasn't a version of this part of a.
By the way, I've seen a lot of people saying, oh, The Rock is too old. That's malarkey. The Rock is a world-class athlete. He's in phenomenal shape. I want to remind everybody, Sting's more than a decade older than him and having his last match in March. I don't think there's an issue with The Rock not being able to get his working boots on. I think we're going to be fine there. Amanda has a great question I wanted to ask you about, because this is something that a lot of people are discussing. Cody has talked about finishing the story, and I know that he's on the cover of the game that's about 40 years of WrestleMania. But Amanda wants to know, if you were in charge and saw fans rejecting The Rock like they are online currently, where would you go from here? Would you still want Cody to finish his story against Roman, or a different PLE other than WrestleMania? I guess that's my question, Eric. Does it have to be WrestleMania, in your opinion, for Cody to finish the story? Could it be SummerSlam? Could it be Payback? Could it be Money in the Bank? Could it be Survivor Series?
Could be all of the above. Could be next year, WrestleMania 41. Could be a million different things. If it was me and my decision, I was the only one in the room, and I had a gun to the back of my head and I had to make a choice, I would find a way to do it this WrestleMania, take advantage of the fact that I've got 2 nights and a lot of options, some great talent. I would also recognize that Rock doesn't need a title.
No,
absolutely doesn't need it. So, yeah, do I see Rock beating Roman? First of all, do I see Rock losing to Roman? Plays the long game. What does that mean? It means you're there to get other people.
Well, that's the thing. Like, once upon a time when Rock was not a board member and not a major stockholder, and he was just, he's in between shows and he's got some availability between shooting his blockbuster movies. Okay, he can come through, but he's going to get paid pretty handsomely to do that. Now he's building value in a company that he's on the board for, and he's got a bunch of shares with, and it totally changes the dynamic, and it's going to be a huge net positive. But allegedly, them pivoting has upset the locker room. Do you think any of that matters? If you lose some, because I've heard that there was so much faith and confidence in this company backstage, and that it was the most harmonious and family-like locker room. Like, we heard that from CM Punk, who would know the difference, I suppose. Do you think all of this, is it a 1-2 punch? The Vince information, the Johnny Laurinaitis information, and now Cody potentially being out of the main event. I think if that's a morale issue, that's another reason to pivot, I think.
I don't think you'd pivot for morale. You're going to pivot for business.
Oh, always. Yes.
And yes, morale is, I guess, important to business in the long run, but I don't think anybody should or is reacting. Some people are going to be affected emotionally. I'm sure Cody is very emotional about this situation, unless he's aware of something that none of us are. But if talent, I could see talent being frustrated and frustrated leading to a dis-ease, not a disease like in sickness, but leading talent to be ill at ease and uncomfortable and disappointed. Because people don't look, human nature. I've been talking a lot about human nature. Human nature doesn't like change.
Right.
Like if you get up every day of your life and out of habit, because you're right-handed, you put your left sock on first, and then you put your right sock on. You've been doing that since you were old enough to put on a sock. And then all of a sudden, government comes in because government likes to control everything, right? They say, from now on, you cannot put your left sock on first. It is mandatory that you put your right sock on before your left sock. People would revolt.
Yes.
They'd be upset, right? They'd impeach whoever came up with that nonsense. Because people don't like change. And all of this going on, the man stuff, the tax, the publicity, the fact that everybody's walking around and would rather not talk about the fact that they work for WWE when they sit down on a plane, because right now is not something you really want to talk about, or you're not really that proud of it for right now, for this moment. I'm not saying everybody, but that would be human nature too. Well, that's going to change. WrestleMania is over. Things finally, at least for a moment, start to settle down a little bit. We know how things played themselves out at WrestleMania the night before, or 2 nights before, whatever. Once it's all over, that those people who are ill at ease and uncomfortable with the change and or disappointed and frustrated, all that'll go. It's temporary.
I want to mention too, I think this is important. I mean, as long as I can remember watching wrestling, Eric, whenever you bring in a big star, a legend, a Hall of Famer, essentially a part-timer, someone who's not going to be here in the future, even back in the territory days, you always make sure you put over the guy who's going to be here, who's going to be carrying the torch. So it almost feels like if Rock's going to give the rub to anybody, it should be Cody, who's working the live events and such. And it's been pointed out that, Rock didn't talk at SmackDown. It's not like he said, I'm coming for the title.
Yeah, that's the kind of thinking I like.
Well, here's what I wanted to ask you, because I made this point on social media over the weekend. The bloodline story is about the head of the family. The bloodline story is about that family. It's about the tribal chief. It's about the head of the table. Like even a month ago, when Rock just popped by and beat up Jinder Mahal and cut that promo and said the Rock's going to go get some dinner. Should he sit at the bar? Should he sit in a booth? Or should he sit at the head of the table? He didn't say anything about the title. Cody's story is about the title, not the bloodline. Do you think, hypothetically, that the title is important to the Rock Roman story at all?
Nope.
I don't either.
Not a bit.
Which makes me think,
reason my glass, even though my jar is almost empty in the eyes of most people, this Muckerfuther's still half full to me for reasons like that.
I can't wait to see what happens. I want to remind everybody, they already have announced the May pay-per-view. It's an international PLE. It's in France and it's going down on May 4th. Meanwhile, Money in the Bank, another international pay-per-view, this time in Toronto, a huge market. That one's going down in July. We don't exactly know where SummerSlam is, but we know it's going to be a big event. And it makes me wonder, if you take a look at Rock's IMDb, he's got a lot of stuff in pre-production and post-production, but he might have some time and now new motivation since he's on the board and this newfound, because let's be clear, when you allocate $500 million to TKO, it's up to TKO how and where they spend that for Netflix. It'll be interesting to see how much more we get of The Rock. I'm not convinced he's just there at WrestleMania.
Nor am I. Nor am I. Especially since he has $30 million worth of stock.
Right.
What would you do, Conrad? What would I do if I had the ability, Bob Rock, and I had the ability to have a positive impact on revenues and stock? Oh, hell yeah. Hell yeah.
Well, let's mention, we said it earlier, we saw this backlash about the Cody Rock circumstance be covered by Barstool. It even made TMZ. And as a reminder, WrestleMania coming up is in Philadelphia. Rock has been in the ring with Roman Reigns once before in Philadelphia after a Royal Rumble. It did not go well. I just don't think they want to recreate that. Like the idea that you could, the crowd was booing so hard that night because they wanted, imagine this, Daniel Bryan. It feels like history is repeating itself here, but this time without Vince McMahon, with a guy who gets wrestling and Hunter, and another guy who gets wrestling and Bryan, and a guy who gets business and Nick Khan and The Rock. I think they got to pivot. I think they'll figure it out, but it makes me want to ask you, because you were the guy who's famous for the Starrcade moment. John Wheeler had a great question. He says, was there ever a decision that was influenced by outside people where no matter how hard you fought it, it didn't matter?
No.
Okay.
Never.
We want to do something a little different here to close the show. We have requested video questions. And if you would like to ask Eric a question for next week's show, you can do it over on Twitter. It's at 83Weeks. We've got a question coming to you right now, though. This one is from our man, Coach Rosie.
Good afternoon, Eric and Conrad. This is Josh from beautiful Phoenix, Arizona. With the recent fan uprising about Cody losing the opportunity to finish his story, how might this possibly impact business from WWE? And do you think possibly fans might revolt and we might have another Daniel Bryan movement like we had a couple years ago?
So I think affecting the moment, the business is important because from a live event standpoint, like I think the numbers have been released. Cody sold the most merch last year in 2023 of anyone in wrestling. He led 2023. And I know Punk absolutely obliterated December, but the other 11 months, Cody was the top dog on the year. And he's making all the house shows and all the appearances and it does feel like if you cut him off at the knees here, that might not be what's best for business. What do you think of Coach Rosie's question there?
I think it's a great question. And we've kind of covered the answer here, at a couple of different times throughout this episode. But I think if they cut Cody off completely at the knees, put him off till some other premium live event, I do think you're going to disappoint the fans. And that was my point when talking about the relationship or the connection between what I went through at Starrcade, Sting and Hogan, and what we see today. Circumstances are completely different in many respects, but at the core of it, the thing that's similar is you don't want to piss off your fans. Now, I will also add, unfortunately, because I'm contradicting myself here, but if you go back and look at the data for all of you data geeks out there or wannabe data geeks, even after the disappointing finish between Hogan and Sting at Starrcade, what happened to our television revenues? Or when I say television, what happened to our ratings? Went up. What happened to our television buy rate or our buy rates for pay-per-views? They remained high, continued to create records. So the effect of disappointing the audience was not felt immediately. In fact, we continued to grow early in 98, post that event. But it was something that tilted the fans a little bit into that disappointment category, which made you vulnerable. And unless you do everything right, which I didn't afterwards, then you can start hemorrhaging fans and hemorrhaging revenue. So I think it is important. I think it could affect business if they make the wrong choices and decisions, but I don't think that's going to happen.
It's going to be interesting to see what happens. I know there's lots of theories out there. We got one from our live chat, one of our fans over on ad-free shows I want to hit here. Michael wants to know, what do you think of the angle using this snub of Cody, where Cody accuses Triple H of taking away his opportunity at Mania because Triple H is pissed about the AEW throne incident? I just don't see them referencing AEW on WWE TV at all. Do you? There's no chance.
That is such, not to be critical of the question. I appreciate every single question we get. That is trying to think of the best way to say this. It's a very small.
It's unrealistic. Yeah.
Yeah. Very small thinking.
Let's do one more video question, then we'll wrap it up. By the way, if you want to ask Eric a video question, you can appear on the show. It's easy. Just tweet us at 83
Make you famous.
Absolutely. Let's do it.
Hey Eric, Alex here from Spain. I have a question for you. So I have this idea, or I read this on Twitter or on Facebook. Some fans said that they have an idea for Roman versus Cody to happen. So that idea was like Roman and The Rock had a contract signing, and Roman Reigns signs the contract, and Rock was going to sign the contract, and it says, The Rock says, didn't you read the contract, did you? And The Rock shows the paper that says Cody versus Roman Reigns at WrestleMania 40 with The Rock as the special guest referee without no bloodline interference and etc. And that will be the ultimate swerve of all swerves. What do you think about that, Eric? Thank you, and God bless you.
Wow. Thank you for the question. Look, I think it's another option, and that's what we were talking about earlier. There's so many ways that everybody can go home happy. Everybody that wanted Cody to come out on top and finish the story can be happy. Everybody that wanted to see Rock and Roman, there is a way to make them happy. There are so many different options available and on the table right now, and enough time to execute them. Look, if this would have been 2 weeks before WrestleMania, I would be much less optimistic because there's just not time to reconfigure or rebuild a story, retool a story. Too much. But hell, 8 weeks? Are you kidding me? There's a lot of time, a lot of options. So that's one option of many.
Well, it's always an option to join us over at adfreeshows.com. We're having a lot of fun. You get to be a part of our live studio audience. You get the shows early and ad free, not just this show, but all of my podcasts. And in addition to that, a bunch of other bonus content you can't get anywhere else. How about Monday Mailbag, where you get to pick the brain of the third guy in the ring, whether it's Nick Patrick in WCW or Mike Chioda. They both have shows that are exclusive to adfreeshows.com. Not just them, but Kevin Sullivan, Tuesdays with the Taskmaster. You could pick his brain each and every week. He was the genius behind some of the heat that we saw on the Nitro era, and you can pick his brain right now at adfreeshows.com. What about Lex Expressed? Lex will be sitting down with me right after Elimination Chamber the very same day. We're going to be talking about the fallout from that and everything else. And how about one of my favorite series? You want to talk about nostalgia? What about The Book? Yeah, that's right. The Book. We go through Jim Crockett's Red Books episodically, day by day, week by week, show by show, breaking down matches and gates and what was going on behind the scenes. And we do it with a member of wrestling royalty, David Crockett, from the genius booking mind of Dusty Rhodes and the excellent penmanship of JJ Dillon. You don't want to miss it. We also have all of our STARRCAST panels and tons of other great products and series that we've cranked out over the years, like Making the Town and so many others. Not just that, but you get interactive bonus episodes. You want to come on the show and ask Eric a question, or JR or Tony Schiavone or any of our hosts. They're all at adfreeshows.com. And we've got, at this point, believe it or not, 4 years of archives. It's more than you can possibly consume at adfreeshows.com. By the way, if your business targets men 25 to 54 years old, there's no better place to advertise than right here on 83 Weeks. You've heard us do some of the same ads for the same companies week after week, year after year. Why is that? Well, because it really works. Find out how affordable it is at advertisewitheric.com. And I want to mention, in my real life, I'm helping people save money, and I would love to help save you some money. Let's throw a couple of house payments over the top rope at savewithconrad.com. I'm talking to you if you've got credit card debt, if you've got a second mortgage, if you've got a car loan. What are you doing? All of a sudden, interest rates are better than they've been in a long time. They've dropped by more than a point since November. This could be the second chance you've been looking for. And if you take a look at your credit card, man, what are you paying? 28, 31%? Don't feel stuck making your minimum payment. Not only is the rate much higher, it's also not tax deductible. Meanwhile, you can get a lower payment and a greater tax deduction. Who doesn't want to save money and skip a couple of house payments? Find out how easy it is at savewithconrad.com. I also want to mention we can help you get out of that apartment and into a house. I don't care what your circumstance is. At savewithconrad.com, we don't say no, we say not yet, but here's how. We want to be your mortgage advisor for life. So if you've got questions about credit or buying a house or paying down credit card debt or how to just boost your score up, man, we can do all that and more at savewithconrad.com. Give us a shout. Let us pick your brain. Call us toll free at 888-425-0105. Send me an email directly at conrad@savewithconrad.com. Or better yet, just get a quick quote, even talk to a live person at savewithconrad.com. It's also important that you check out all of our new merch, including the brand new We Want Cody shirt. I'm an Eric Bischoff guy. Cody is the guy, and so much more. It's 83weeksmerch.com. The easiest, cheapest, best way to support the show is our YouTube. It's 83 Weeks on youtube.com. And Eric and I are committed to making sure that we grow that YouTube. And how are we going to do it? We're going to start going live. When there's breaking news, you won't have to wait till Monday to see what we think about it. You're not only going to hear it live, you can ask questions live. So if you haven't already, go hit subscribe. We just passed 100,000 subscribers over there. For years and years, YouTube was not our priority. We've been focusing on the RSS. That changes in 2024. So it's one thing to hear the show. It's another to see it. Thanks to our crack producer, Dave Silva, who's got lots of video accompaniments, if you will, accoutrement to enhance your 83 weeks experience. It's 83 weeks on youtube.com. And by all means, shout at us on Twitter. He is at eBischoff. I am at Hey, it's Conrad. You can find Eric over on Instagram at The Real Eric Bischoff. I am at Hey, it's Conrad Thompson. And of course, we're on all the platforms for our show at 83 Weeks. If you'd like to ask Eric a question and your video appear here on the show, just tweet it to him. It's at 83 Weeks. You can find us that way on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook. Eric, I never know what to expect when we sit down and click record. We went all around the horn today. We talked about AEW. We talked about the big announcements. We talked about free agency. We talked about WWE Creative. We talked about the board. We talked about the Vince McMahon lawsuit. We talked about Johnny Ace. We talked about the feds. Goodness gracious, this was an action-packed episode today.
It was indeed. I love what you're talking about as far as going live on YouTube. If there's breaking news, I love that kind of thing. So I am here for it 24/7.
So if you haven't already, check it out. 83 Weeks on youtube.com. Hit the subscribe button and turn on the notifications bell. About half of you who watch our YouTube videos actually subscribe. If you'll hit subscribe, it really helps us out. It costs you absolutely nothing. And if you hit that notification bell, who knows? You could ask Eric a question live here on the show. Eric, I have a feeling that next week we're going to be talking about Tony Khan's announcement. We're going to be talking about Monday Night Raw. We're going to be talking about SmackDown. We're going to be talking about
that press conference coming up.
And if I had to guess, there might be even more Vince McMahon news. I mean, it just feels like we can't escape it. So don't you dare go anywhere. We'll see you next week right here on 83 Weeks, unless something crazy happens. And then you can find us live at 83 Weeks on youtube.com. And we'll see you next week right here. Same bat time, same bat channel. 83 Weeks with Eric Bischoff. Hey, it's Conrad Thompson here to tell you a little more about what adfreeshows.com is all about. Get early, ad-free access to more than a dozen of your favorite wrestling podcasts every single week, starting at just $9. That's less than 20 cents an episode each month. And yes, you can listen to them all directly through Apple Podcasts or your regular podcast apps. How easy is that? Ad-free shows also has thousands of hours worth of bonus content and docuseries like Title Chase, Eric Fires Back, Conversations with Conrad, and The Insiders. Plus new series like The Book with David Crockett, Monday Mailbags with Mike Chioda and Nick Patrick, and a whole lot more. And you want to talk about early? You can't get any earlier than listening to the shows live. You can be a part of the live studio audience as we record the podcast. Plus ride shotgun alongside your favorite childhood heroes for live watch-alongs, Q&As, and other interactive experiences every single month. Come on now, see for yourself what thousands of other wrestling fans from around the world have discovered, that adfreeshows.com is the best value in wrestling. Check it out today, and hey, when you do, the first week is completely free. adfreeshows.com.